Okay. So, just a recap of last week. This is pretty much what we covered. Talked about a bunch of stuff. Got into content a little bit. Information architecture at the end. I think I want to try and think through that game that we did with information architecture a bit more next time. It's fun for everyone to do it. The challenge was really to actually do it. I'd like to maybe talk about it a bit more next time. Do that, but no worries. And then assignments 1 and 2, which we're actually due today. I did have a few questions about come through about that, so hopefully I was able to answer that for everyone. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about design. And specifically we're going to be talking about both website desktop design, so if I'm looking at a website on here or on my laptop, and also mobile design. And then at the end, toward the end, I asked you last week if you could to take a look at a website, specifically a tool called Wireframe, and then we're going to look at that a bit more tonight. No worries. And we're going to have a good play with that tool because that's going to be what your next assignment is going to be based on. Okay? So, here's what's on tap. We are going to start by looking at 6 fundamentals. There are really a lot of fundamentals of good design, especially on desktop. But we're going to start with 6 of them, 6 which I think you should know pretty well because you're going to see them a lot. Once I show them to you and explain that there's actually thought that goes into them, you're going to just start seeing them everywhere when you look at websites and things that maybe aren't even websites, things that are like posters or emails or brochures that you get. You'll see that there are these principles of design that spread across all of these different things. We're going to talk a little bit about navigation because that's pretty important, especially when it comes to good website design. Color is really important for both mobile and desktop. And then we're going to dive into mobile a little bit. And then finally, we're going to spend some time in Wireframe. And of course, we can talk about assignment 3 as well. So, fundamentals. We're going to start with this one. Has anyone ever heard of the F pattern before? Does anyone know what that is? Yeah? Can you tell? Right. There you go. Okay, so what you're looking at here are 3 different web pages, and this is known as a eye tracking report. And essentially, what it comes from is a study where, and this is done sort of all over the place and with all different sorts of things. But basically, it's done in, usually it's a pretty controlled environment. Someone, the subject, the person doing the test will sit at a laptop or a computer. There'll be a webcam on that computer looking at their eyes and then also copying what's going on the screen. And they will study where people's eyes focus. And so as you can see here, just based on where the red is where most people pay attention to first, and then as you can see when it trails off is where their attention trails off to. So in a lot of design you will see this F pattern wherein most people will start reading something at the top left of a page and then move to the right and then slowly move down. So that's why bullets, for instance, are always positioned on the left-hand side, or pick anything really, and most things are positioned on the left-hand side, usually top left-hand side. Most company logos on websites will be the top left. Prominent things on any article or any big web page will probably be at the top left. Sometimes they break this design on purpose to create either to draw your attention to something else or for other reasons, but most of the time you're going to see something follow this pattern. So as you can see, the reason it's called the F pattern is because if I overlay, sorry for the contrast there, but if I overlay the letter F onto this, you'll see why it's called the F pattern. Bit of a breakdown of the F pattern and the reason why it's even in place and things that you can take away from this fundamental principle of design is the idea that most users, most people, and think of yourself too, you most likely won't read every single word that's on a web page. Unless, of course, it's something that you're extremely interested in, which is completely fine. But in most cases, if you're just trying to catch up on something or read about something quickly, we don't all spend time reading everything. Another thing to consider is that the first 2 paragraphs of a web page are usually the most important because they are usually closer to the top, and we're going to talk about this in the next principle in a second, but because they're usually closer to the top, try to include as much important information as you can in those first 2 paragraphs. And then the final bullet essentially talks about, firstly, the bullet should really call out the fact that you should use subheadings as often as you can, because subheadings allow the eyes to have a point of rest. If you think about the way a subheading is designed, it's usually bold, it usually has a bit of space around it, and it's usually pretty short. It might be kind of long, but it's usually shorter than, let's say, a whole paragraph of text. So just naturally, when you look at that, it's something bold to call your eyes out to. And again, if you have a bunch of subheadings, people read, remember, to the left and down, so they'll start to see the subheadings as they read down, and maybe they'll pick one that they're interested in reading, and then read from there down. So just remember, when you are starting your subheadings and even the paragraphs that follow right under that, try to include the more important information toward the beginning of either the subheading or the entire article. Okay. And the point about information carrying words basically says unless you're creatively trying to do something different, when you're using a subheading, try to include important information in that subheading so that people will know what they're about to get into, as opposed to it being too vague, too confusing, because quite frankly, people just don't have the time, right? They're just not going to pay attention to what you've actually typed. If it's too vague for them, you'll just move on. Think about yourself. Think about, how many of you read articles where you open a bunch of tabs in a browser, and then think about how quickly you might want to move through that stuff. Or even when you're reading emails, how many of you, get a lot of email in a day and you got to try and scan through all of your stuff in your inbox. You look at the subject line first and you see, okay, is this interesting? Yes. If so, I'm going to open it. If it's not, I'm going to delete it without even looking at the body of the email. So subjects, subheadings, headings, these are all very, very important things in design. And you're going to see a lot of that today, actually. Principle number 2 deals with the way we behave as modern humans reading the internet. In that most of the time we scan and we don't actually read. Most of the time. A study I found that the source is at the bottom of the slide, so when you get the slides you can take a look at the source, but it says 79% of people scan content online, they don't actually read it. So the pyramid that you see on the right-hand side actually comes from PR, and the idea that if you're writing a press release, if any of you have ever written one or if you've taken a writing course, you usually start with the most important information at the very top of the press release. Right, the first paragraph, usually. Sometimes even the first 2 sentences. And then from there, you go down in the level of importance. Typically, it just gets into more detail as you go down, but really, if you're trying to create content for people who are just going to scan it, then try to put the more important information at the top. And then the suggestions on the left-hand side just talk about how you can design content for scanning versus reading. So using lists, using a lot of subheadings, trying to include just one key point for every paragraph that you write. This can be tricky because, hi Coral, come on in. This can be tricky because sometimes we might have a tendency to really want to talk about a lot of stuff. And so we might, lengthen a paragraph, or you might break it up under different subheadings. But a good thing to consider is if you are writing a lot of paragraphs, try to keep it to 1 point per paragraph that you write, as opposed to jumbling 2 or 3 in there. Because, again, think about the way we read, right? If we're going to read and we're going to scan, if your paragraphs usually contain 1 point, it probably will be a shorter paragraph than other paragraphs that contain more than 1 point. So try to keep it short and then follow this principle of the inverted pyramid, where you start with the most important information and then you flow down. Usually websites, not just web pages or articles, but entire websites are sometimes designed this way, where the homepage, at the top of the homepage, will usually be some pretty important information. And then as you move further down, it can be a bit more detail, not necessarily less important information, but maybe a bit more detail, something where hopefully we've grabbed your attention at the top and then you'd want to scroll down, get deeper. But when it comes to writing, especially things like blogs, articles, even just web pages in general, that inverted pyramid is definitely a principle you want to try and follow. The third principle, and now we're going to start, for some of these principles, we're going to start looking at some examples and we're going to try and talk through them as a class. And I want to keep referring to the same examples as we go through so that we can see how the different principles play in each of the examples. How many of you have heard of this concept of something called a fold before when it comes to website design? Okay, Brittany, do you want to tell us a bit about what that means?
Basically, you don't want your content to be on the fold.
Okay, and what is the fold?
Where you close the newspaper in half and it's like on the seam, right?
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, so you don't want your content to be on it, or in some cases in web design, below it.
Yeah, because then you're going to use the front.
Right, so if you,
Flip it like the very bottom.
totally. So if you take a look at this picture, the idea of a fold in web design actually comes from print. It's a very, very old idea. Okay, how many of you receive the newspaper to your house every day or have in the past? Okay, none of you, that's cool. You like digital. I like that too. So historically, when newspapers were delivered either to someone's home, now they're rolled up, but historically, or even if you go to a newsstand, the newspaper will be folded from, if it's a full-length newspaper, it'll be folded in half, and the top half is what you will see as a customer, right? Potential customer walking by, which is why headlines on the front page of a newspaper are a big, big deal. When it's folded in half, you're going to see what's on top. So that's the concept of a fold. The fold is the top half, in this case, of a newspaper. On a website, what that means is when you open up any website on a device, so for instance, a computer right in front of you, your laptop, or your phone, it is what you see without scrolling. Okay? It's what you see without scrolling. So when you open up any website, before you touch your mouse, what you see there is called the content that's living above the fold. There's actually a specific number of pixels in height that content usually is, but now it's mostly dependent on your screen size. So when designers are creating websites, they try to look for the most common screen size and they try to design stuff to fit inside this fold, the most important stuff. But I'm here to tell you that really nowadays, this idea of the fold is a bit of a myth because so many people have so many different screen sizes. Mobile is a huge thing now. So what more and more designers are starting to do is to build websites in such a way that the fold doesn't even really matter that much. So yes, you load a web page and the first thing that you see is very important, but then it's designed in such a way to hopefully lead you to read more or want to engage more. And I'm going to show you examples of that in a second. So the way you can design for it, or the way you should think of it, is, again, at the very beginning, at the very top, try to keep it using, don't look at the newspaper as an example, but at the very top, if you think of web pages that you really like, the ones that are usually less busy as you open them up, so above the fold, the ones that have more concise content, cleaner looks, are typically easier to understand, easier to engage with. The ones that use strong horizontal lines across the page to show you this is where the content stops, this is where the next piece begins, can be helpful, but could also be kind of dangerous, and we're going to take a look at that in a second. Most importantly, I think the third bullet on this slide is probably the most important one, because people now, more so than ever even, I would say, especially online, love stories. And so if you can tell a story through the design of your web page and you use specific elements to lead people down a story, we're going to see examples of that in a second, then you would have done a pretty good job. Not only following the concept on the previous slide about this inverted pyramid where you start with the most important stuff and then lead people down, but also from a design perspective, you're taking advantage of the idea that, again, people are going to read interesting stuff. So if you can make your content interesting and make the design built in such a way where people will want to keep going, so you think of a homepage of a website, if you start at the top, only if you're really interested will you want to keep going down. Design it in such a way that you can allow for that. And we'll look at that stuff in a second. So we'll start with this page. Okay, this is a screenshot of Dropbox. How many of you have heard of Dropbox? Obviously, for this class we had to use it. We use a Dropbox. I don't know if it's powered by the company Dropbox, but this is Dropbox's business page. They have a Dropbox for personal and a Dropbox for business. So this is their business page. Can someone, let's make some comments about the way they've designed this page based on just the 3 things we've talked about so far. What do we think about the design? Katrina,
Well,
what do
as
you
we were just talking about the fold, everything is right there. You don't need to scroll.
Okay.
So they've done a good job of that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So if I wanted to go anywhere on this website that they've created, they have the menu in a pretty interesting spot. They have basically talked a lot. Like they've got a nice heading there, and then a nice subheading to tell you a bit about what it is, and some buttons all over the place. Great. A lot of good information at the very top, and in this case they have designed for the fold and gone above it. Anything else? Any other comments? Yeah, Ingrid,
You
go.
talked about the inverted pyramid, so it actually looks like an inverted pyramid, the shape of it, and also the information.
Okay.
The top line as well as its larger font. as
Right.
opposed to the smaller, so.
Okay, yeah. Anyone see anything else? Okay, I'll point out something to you just using my hands.
Yeah.
If you're watching the recording, I apologize, but I'm basically about to make an F pattern here, there, and then here. So if you take the letter F and you lay it across the screen, the long part of the F, the part that goes straight down, is essentially the menu that you're looking at there. And then the top line of the F is that huge, bold, securely share, sync, and collaborate line. And then maybe the middle part of the F happens to be where the try it free is. So just pretty interesting in the way that they've designed that. Now you'll notice at the very bottom of that screenshot, which some of you might have to look over the monitor to see, it says why Dropbox for business. So they've done an okay job in designing for the fold there, because if you stopped at the logos, you might think there's nothing left on the page. But then putting that one sentence in there might prompt you to read more and drill a bit further down the page. That's just something that might happen. Okay, let's look at another example. Comments on this page. This is the same company, but this is Dropbox for personal as opposed to Dropbox for business. Any comments on this one?
Too much white space.
Okay, too much white space. All right. Anyone want to counter that with saying there is no such thing as too much white space?
Well, as a theory though, like they say white space is good.
Yeah.
They always say that there's never too much white space, but for me on a screen, I feel like I'm kind of blinded.
Right. Especially because the diagram too happens to be kind of like light and, there's not much. If that computer happened to be in color or a real image as opposed to a cartoon, that could be interesting. But yeah, I agree in this case that there is a lot of white space that they could be doing a bit more with this.
Contradicted myself, I apologize.
It's
but I
okay.
needed-
No, it's okay. Okay, what else? If you look really close, and if some of you have the slide up on your screen, you'll see something that they've done to speak specifically to one of the principles I just talked about. Try and tell me what that is. Laura?
The horizontal line.
Okay, what about it? You're close.
Well, you have to scroll down to get more context.
Right. So there's this huge horizontal line here. And in fact, if you look at the slides from 2 slides ago, it says don't use horizontal lines because people naturally think that's just you stop at a horizontal line. Right? It's just the way things are. You think of your monitor right now, it's a square and the horizontal line at the bottom happens to be the bottom of your monitor, but you stop there. There's no content below that. But above the horizontal line, there's this tiny little thing that says learn more, and there's an even smaller arrow that points down, which is very, very interesting. I can't actually remember what happens when you click that button, but if I were to guess, I would guess that all that would happen would be that you click it and it just scrolls down for you. It automatically just pushes the screen down. But it's very, very small, it's very subtle. It's hard to see on this big screen, but if it were in front of you, I'm betting you would see it. Because quite honestly, there isn't much that they're talking about at the top. Right now, Dropbox happens to be a fairly well-established company. If you have heard anything about it, you probably already know what it is, so they don't necessarily need to spend a ton of time explaining themselves, which is really nice, a great position to be in as a company. But in this case, if you don't know who they are and you want to learn more, there is that tiny little option for you. What about this company? Charity Water, charity based out of the US that does some pretty cool things. What do you think of this design? Any of the principles that we just covered? Does anyone see anything they think is interesting? Ingrid?
Once again, I see the inverted pyramid right in the middle.
Right.
The most important information at the top, again, the large font.
Yep.
It does kind of have that affirmation without the.
Yeah, without the
left,
vertical line,
yeah.
sure.
And again, the color in the photo.
Yeah. Laura?
I was scanning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, scanning. Totally. Totally. Yeah, they're not using a lot of words other than for that little subhead, right? But if you were scanning this page and only reading the big things, you know, you can kind of, so I took a screenshot here, but the way this page works, I don't know if their homepage is like this right now, but the way this page used to work is the you can part stays the same, the for clean water part stays the same, but this part here just keeps changing. So it just suggests the different kinds of things that you could do to raise money for clean water. So in this case, it was host a music festival. But if you were scanning this page again, you would probably read that heading. You might or might not read what's below it, but you would probably see the word start a campaign, and then starting a campaign is easy. Anyone want to call out what they've decided to do as a design decision just in that image and the use of the color of starting a campaign is easy? Anyone want to call that out? Talk to that at all? Okay, see how the image in the background happens to be a picture, but it's cut off. It doesn't stretch the full width of the screen. It's cut off. There's a horizontal line there. That's fine. But there's immediate color difference. Right? So you see that because there is that color difference, you might think, okay, I'm attracted to that. There's something there, and then there's this huge heading there. So again, they have put in a horizontal line, but they've designed around it by adding a color and adding a huge heading to say there's probably more information down here, so you should scroll. Had they decided to make the image the full width of the screen and maybe not had such a bold heading or something, you might think that that's it for the homepage. But this is also a static screenshot, so you might not really know. But again, I just wanted to show you that in this case, they've decided to make it colorful and also add in a huge heading. If you pay attention, the heading at the bottom is actually the same size in font as the heading at the very top. So it means that it matters just as much as the heading at the top. It just happens to be a little further down the page. Okay, final page before we move on to the next principle. This one. Mint.com. Some of you might be users of Mint.com. Heard of it? It's a personal finance management app/tool. Again, I apologize for the contrast. It's a bit better on my screen than it is on that projector. But the top line there says, be good with your money. So you can be creative with your time. Thoughts? What do we think about the design of this page, just based on the 3 principles we've talked about so far? Yeah.
It's telling a story.
Okay.
For
Good.
me, even the word mint kind of is a play on words because it's like mint
Minting
means
money.
like Canadian mint money.
Yep. Yep.
So
Very
they're
good.
playing on that.
Very good.
That caught my
Absolutely.
attention.
Good. Yeah. Good. Great. Yeah, Andy.
It's easy to scan, you give up your money, and you spend like the 3 little sections below. Just go
Perfect.
to the page,
Yeah.
money.
Absolutely. Very easy to scan. They've put subheadings in very good places. Not a lot of text, really. I mean, you know, most of the stuff in the picture is huge, the text. And then there's this tiny little sentence underneath it. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
They've also broken up the horizontal lines a little bit.
There you go. Yeah, they sure have. They could have easily chosen to not put that in, folks. Right? Like, you can just imagine how easy it would be to just not have this little thing here. And yeah, you've got just the same kind of style of web page, right? Minus that little triangle at the bottom. It's basically the same. But they put in the triangle at the bottom. And you best believe that that's on purpose to draw your attention to those 3 things. We're not going to talk about it in this class, but in a later class we're going to talk about these things called directional cues that you'll see on websites. And that happens to be one of them. When you look at that, you might think it's an arrow pointing down. And really, that's exactly what it is. So, it's cool. Okay. Fundamental principle number 4 is one of my personal favorites because I'd like to hear from any of you if you've been at a company or maybe been in a situation where you've had to deal with this. So how many of you can think of web pages or websites that either you like yourself navigating to, or you've been a part of a company that has a website like this, where on the home page of the website you have this scrolling header thing. It's called a carousel, actually, that has an image, some text, maybe a button there, and then you can it either automatically scrolls after every few seconds, or you can choose to scroll further. You see the different types of options: numbers, buttons with numbers and circles, or just circles. Sometimes there are other things. How many of you have had that before?
That's how Conestoga's website is.
Right, that's how Conestoga's website is. Okay. Okay.
Literally right on the homepage.
There you go. Okay. So, I'm going to share with you some fun data around this. Now, this are 2 different studies. The sources are all in the slides, so you can get all this stuff. 2 different studies that were done a couple years back. They both happen to be looking at an educational institute, in this case, University of Notre Dame in the US. The first study that I'm going to show you looked at the University of Notre Dame's homepage, which happens to get almost 4 million visits I think in the course of a year is what they looked at it. I'm pretty sure it was a year. I might have to correct myself on that. But let's just assume it's 4 million visits in a year. It's a lot of eyeballs in a year. And then the second study looked at a specific department. I forget which department, but a specific department within that university. Okay, so the first study is the university's homepage as a whole. Second study is just a specific department. So pick a department, doesn't really matter. That department, and that department happened to get 37,000 visits. This might have been monthly. Those numbers seem a bit more correct. But anyway, so both of those homepages happen to have carousels on there, and each carousel had a certain number of options. So I think it was probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by the looks of it. So what I'm going to show you now is the data that was accumulated after it looked at how many people clicked on which image in the carousel. So this is the first one. This is the homepage of University of Notre Dame. So what was the click-through rate for the image or the link in position 1? So the first thing that showed up, and then the subsequent things that showed up. I think this study was done over the course of, again, it could be a year or a month. I can't exactly remember the time frame. But even if it was a month or a year, the answer here is pretty obvious. And if you can imagine the next one, it's very much the same.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
about that?
yeah.
Is it maybe because people tend to prioritize the content as well, like when they design the site, so they put the most important thing in the first spot?
Totally. So imagine you are in that company. My question to you would be, why even bother with any of that? Right? I mean, if you are prioritizing and you're putting the most important information at the front, well, you're doing a great thing because that's exactly what people want to click through. But when you think about position 5 or position 4, if you look at the relative percentage there, it's not even a question as to, well, should we continue to put stuff there? Especially if you're counting on the stuff in positions 3, 4, and 5 actually being clicked on or mattering. Like if you think there happens to be a lot of information we need to put out there and let's put it all in the first one, but we can't, so we've got to spread it out. Let's put some on the second, the third. Well, and folks, I used to be at a company, well, Christie, and also previously a previous website of Exonify, we used to do this too. I've been guilty of this myself, where sometimes it's tough to please everyone, and when you're working for a company that a lot of people want to see their kind of content on the web, on the homepage, we say, okay, we can put it in our fun little carousel. We'll put you at position 3. If we show them this kind of data, back then I didn't really look at this stuff too closely, but now, if there were any advice I would give, it would be just think about what you're, and I'm going to share this in a second, but the idea here is try and use one message, and certainly you can test which message is going to work or not. We're going to cover that in our testing class, but if you had to use other options, right? So if you had a situation where you needed to show more than one thing on the homepage, some of the best things I've seen now, and some of the literature will tell you that the way you should design it is you should give the user control. Don't necessarily change it automatically, like have an auto-rotating carousel. Give the user control and give them a bit of a preview as to what they can actually see. So, for instance, if I were to draw it out for you, we have a slider that looks like that. This is just an idea that I've seen work actually quite well, is you've got some information here, and this would be the home page, and this would be the first thing that people see. It doesn't change. And then you've got more information here, 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 and here. 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are still 5 pieces of information, but if you show a bit of a preview, maybe it's an image and some words or something, where the user can say, you know what, these two don't actually matter to me, but picture 4 does. They click it, and then that picture just appears over here. That's another way of using the same concept of showing a lot of information at once, but instead of auto-rotating and then seeing stats like that, you give the user control to say, okay, let's click on that one and maybe see what that's all about. Now, there haven't yet been studies done to show whether this is in fact effective, but if you read about the use of carousels and how you should design websites around them and not try to leverage them as much as you think you should, these are the kinds of solutions that they will offer you now. Right? Because if you think about yourself, right? If you, instead of these maybe pictures and summaries, you just saw buttons, what is your... why would you be motivated to click on the next button or the 4th button or the 3rd button? Right? Whereas if you see this stuff, you now have the choice. You can see, you can read, you can see the picture, whatever's there. You now have the choice to say, yes, I want to engage with content 5 because it's actually interesting to me. And so you click it, it shows up there, it's big. This way, you can appease the people who want important information on the homepage, but you can also avoid this whole situation where people just don't care about these other things, they only care about the first thing. So you can keep the important stuff first, have it load first, but then have options at the bottom. So next time you see a carousel, just really think about it. Are they trying stuff like this, or are they using the traditional design of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Because another thing about the way we look at websites is we don't just sit and wait. Right? When you load up a homepage, you're not going to sit there. Just think about it. You're not going to necessarily sit there and just watch the thing go by. It's not the way we navigate websites.
I think with that timing as well, because I know the ones that fly by, you're like, okay, I'm not
Totally.
going to bother.
Yeah, great question. I can't recall if there have been studies exactly on like the exact amount of time to keep one up. But whenever I've worked with designers who've done it, they've usually suggested they usually limit you on the number of characters you put on one. So they say, okay, you can, if we're going to design this, you only have 250 characters, let's say. And then they say, how long will it take an average person to read those characters 3 times? And then whatever that is. It usually amounts to somewhere between 7 to 9 seconds. Usually. I think ours used to be 7 at Axonify anyway. But even then, we designed it in such a way where we tried this method as opposed to we happened to still design it where it still sort of switched between these. But I can't think of a study. I'm sure there is one, but I just haven't found it. But yeah, it's an interesting question. Because if you keep it too long, people are just going to move. But if you switch it too fast, then they're going to be distracted and not engage at all. So it's tough. It's a tough situation. Principle number 5. This is a fairly easy one to understand. And you probably already, I can think of why, but our brains are designed in such a way, in fact, our eyes are designed in such a way, that when we see complex information versus simple information, the simpler design information is scientifically easier for us to process. And I'm going to show you tangible examples of this. So hopefully, if you're looking at the slides on your screen right now or on a piece of paper, just don't for a second and just pay attention to the projector, because that's where this test is going to be kind of effective. So I want you to tell me which of these 2 things is easier for you to process. You already thought too hard about it? Okay. Anyone? Which breed is easier for you to look at?
I might be wrong, but mine's the left
Okay.
because it's proper to me.
It's proper. Okay. Okay, great. And what about anyone for the right at all? Okay. Okay, yeah. So,
Mine is the double letters that I see right now.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wrong.
Sorry. The projector is a little blurry, so that's kind of throwing everyone off. But when it's this big, sure. You could argue either side. Now, what about now? It's pretty damn obvious because the projector is so bad, but no different. The letters have not changed at all. I've just added color. And on my screen, or maybe on the screen in front of you, you can actually read the word breathe on the right-hand side. But I have literally changed nothing about the letters. I've just added color.
I think maybe distance matters too, because I actually skipped ahead to that slide
Okay.
before you said that.
Yeah.
And on that screen, I was like, well, the one to the right, because there's more space.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more
Here?
breathing room.
Yep.
So on my screen, I thought the one on the right was easier than the projector, the one on the left, because it's
Closer together.
and it's easier to absorb as a chunk.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect. And then here, will most of you say the left?
Unless you're coming from.
Yeah, unless you happen to be, yeah. And it's interesting, again, because I haven't, it's a design decision for me to choose which colors I'm going to put in those boxes. And on the left, I just happened to choose ones that were contrasting so that you could actually read the letters there. So let's take a look at some examples of this on real websites. Again, screenshots only. Some of the principles, so not just simplicity, but a few of the others. Feel free to comment on any one of them so far. What do we think about this page? Carousels and stuff too, we can talk about. So just so everyone understands the functionality here, if I click, see how this image over here matches this image down here? The big image matches the image at the bottom left. If I click on the next one, it'll take up the entire screen. So it works kind of like this. Okay, so that's pretty good design. Anyone want to comment at all about the simplicity or anything like that on this? Could you imagine what might happen? See where it says cutting edge core HR and then the yellow box? See the black box behind it? If I took that away, the cutting core HR would probably be impossible to read. Right? So again, it's a design decision from their perspective. They wanted to use that big image, and a pretty colorful image at that. But in order to do that, in order to put text over it, they had to put this big contrasting box behind it so that you could actually read it.
Yeah, I feel like the background is a bit busy, and then also the yellow, because the person's also wearing yellow, the button doesn't immediately pop out like it would on a more...
Great point. Really good point. Yeah, it just so happens. And I think an even bigger issue is that, especially on this screen, it doesn't quite look right here either. The yellows are a bit different.
Yeah.
Right? They're two different shades of yellow. And so your eye is kind of, it's torn on where to look. Do you look at the person, or do you happen to look at the big button that's next to the person, also in the same shade? Again, design decisions can be changed, certainly. But from a complexity point of view, you could make the argument that when you've got two things that are both yellow and black, one happens to be text and words and one happens to be an image, which one do you pay attention to? And you're confusing your audience by doing that, maybe. We looked at this example, but let's look at it again. And now comment maybe a bit on simplicity. No carousels here, so that's easy. Contrast, things like that. The projector is, again, throwing you off because it's darker than it seems. Any thoughts? There's something that you're going to be seeing. You're seeing it now, but you're not necessarily paying attention to it. It's going to be very, very obvious to you in a little while as to the way they've designed these pages.
I like the contrast of the white with
Okay.
the
Image. Yep.
Because, I don't know, it just draws your eye downward, like you said before with that triangle.
Totally.
It just naturally leads your eye to follow the page downward.
Totally. Yeah.
And also the fact, I don't know if that triangle, with respect or if it's interactive or not, but the fact that it's right underneath the
Yes.
sign up free button also I think is very effective because your eyes just naturally drawn to
Go
that
there.
triangle and then you look up and there's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. True. The image itself actually has a layer of black over it so that the text can be more obvious. So if you look at it on a desktop or you look at it on your slides in front of you, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a darker image than what you might think, and that's just so they can make the text clearer. What about this? Now let's go back to our good old whitespace friend, Dropbox. Might make the argument now that all of this whitespace has allowed you to actually look at the text a little bit. You might argue that there's not enough of it or that there's too much whitespace, but things really stand out when you've got a lot of whitespace like that. Especially when your text happens to be, in that case, black and bold up there. Pretty interesting how they use really simple color to just make things kind of really pop quite a bit.
Yeah, that button really jumps out.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so now we're going to get into a bit of physics, actually. I think this is from physics, I'm pretty sure. And this is an interesting concept because this is the one where I told you you've probably been looking at things on websites for a long time, and even the slides we just looked at, and seeing some things that they were there that were there, but not really understanding that there might have been design around it. So this is what Fitz's law says. Take a look. I think this is actually a simplified version for web, if I'm not mistaken. The true source is at the bottom of the slide, but does everyone get what that means? Sorry?
Every time you say fits, I just think of it's totally unrelated, but the president and scandal. His name is Fitz.
So, the closer and larger a target, the faster it is to click on that target. Now we're going to start getting into the purpose of some of these websites and some of these home pages specifically. So, let me show you an example. What is the target there? Got it. Can anyone take a guess at if I open this page on my browser, where would, I'll use my hand, you can guide me, where would my mouse be? My pointer on my mouse, my hand is the pointer on my mouse, where would it be if I just opened this?
Fine.
Sorry?
The try free?
Right, so you're saying if I'm just,
It would start
without
in
me
the
doing
middle.
anything, would it start somewhere here? Or would it be all the way over here? Like the pointer, you can try this right now. If you open up any browser and you open up any web page, where does your mouse pointer usually land?
In the middle.
Right. Happens to land in the middle. Sometimes it's closer to the top, but most times you'll find that it happens to land in the middle. And so the law says the closer and larger the target, the faster, not the easier, but the faster it is to be able to click on that target. The closer and larger, the faster you can click on it. Okay, so obviously, from Dropbox Business's perspective, the big goal of this page happens to be that big large box that says try it free. Because if you look really close, there's actually another button right underneath it that says or buy for $15 per user per month. It's a button, it's underlined, it's nowhere near as big, nowhere near as prominent, it doesn't even look like a button. I just knew it's a link because it's underlined. And it also happens to be in the middle of the page. But clearly that's not what their main goal is, not exactly what they want you to do. Another example. Happen to notice the size, the relative position of the button. The fact that there happens to also be another button underneath that. In this case, the blue button says sign up, the other one says sign in. Sometimes it's really annoying because if you've signed up for these things, they make it very difficult for you to actually sign in and use it because their buttons are not as obvious because they don't really care about.
Tumblr is the worst for that. Sometimes, like, how am I even gonna log in?
Right.
Why?
Because they're just pushing
Happens all
people.
the time.
They're pushing people to sign up first and then not really care because if you've already signed up, they've already got you, so they know that you'd put extra effort in to try and sign in.
Brutal.
Yeah. Okay, another example. Now this happens to be an interesting one because I can't quite remember what happens when you click on the button on the top right. But obviously this one again, pretty easy, right? Big button, middle of the screen. Happens to be something that they're trying to get you to do. The button on the top right though, it just says My Charity Water. I can't remember what that does. But it's the same color and the same style as the blue in the middle. So usually that indicates that it does the same thing, but I can't quite remember in this case. But here's an example of one that is the same.
So this strategy works mostly for desktop, right? Like for mobile.
We
I
will
guess
see.
It's more of a convenience thing that it's right in the middle of your screen, but it doesn't really affect your person.
We'll see. We'll see in a second. In a little bit, actually, when we look, because we're going to look at mobile design a little bit later tonight. But you will see that it actually. Well, I won't give it away. Yeah, I won't give it away. But here you go. Here's yet another example. A lot of you called out, maybe even thought about the fact that these boxes, or these buttons in this case, happen to be fairly obvious. Like they're trying to make, it's a different color. It's kind of bigger-ish. This one happens to be not as big as some of the other ones, but it's still big. It's also a different color, so it's contrasting to make it stand out. And then also happens to be repeated in the top right-hand corner of the page. Same words, same color scheme. Just repeat it again for you to understand, okay, when you see that orange button, you know what it means. That's why they're doing that. And again, look at the position of this orange button on the main page in the middle. It's no coincidence. I could really pull screenshots all day for this stuff, and it will probably all, in a lot of cases you'll find that there are these trends where close to the middle of the page is where you'll see some prominent things happening, some big buttons. And the bigger the button, probably the more important it is for the company, and that's why they've made it so big. So in this case, they want you to try and sign up for this service. In Charity Water's case, they want you to start a campaign. In Dropbox's case, they want you to sign up, things like that. Okay. All right, so we are basically at 7:30 here. We're going to take a really quick break, 10 minutes or so, just see if you want to go grab something to snack on or drink on. And then we're going to come back, look at a few more principles, and then dive into mobile. These principles that we're going to look at in a few minutes are a bit deeper, so we're going to spend a bit more time on them. Feel free to take a quick break.
And then your IDs.
Like, definitely high sensitivity, something weird.
No.
Yeah.
Do you know how to upload a theme to WordPress that you downloaded?
Uploaded theme that
Like
you.
I don't have the add new button. Do you have to have a premium account to do that?
Where did you download the theme?
Like there's articles on Google about how to do it. But you download the zip file, and then there you go to appearance and themes, and there's supposed to be an add new button.
Yeah. I think they could be a perfect download though.
Yep, she's in the,
No.
oh, never mind.
Oh,
What's the difference?
I think it's
It's on
more
Wordpress.
helpful.
Yeah, so
A development version of WordPress. So you can like typically things like that, like plugins and themes you can download are designed for.
But you got your domain name, right? But you have it you have it pointed out.
WordPress.
Just post it.
Yeah.
We didn't. So you can take.
If you wanna do that, like I can host it for you.
Like WordPress.org.
Yeah, like I will hosting package where I can host it for you. So it's 5 minutes for you. Just download the rest.
Okay.
If that's the way you wanna go.
Is this for another course?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for
Yeah.
for
So
life. Yeah.
Yeah, for life. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So what would be the difference then in like when I go to edit and stuff, I still go on WordPress?
Yeah, well, it doesn't need it. It's just the same stuff. No, it's not much work at all. Because you, if you chosen themes
Yeah.
and I'm hosting hers,
Yeah.
like I have her domain pointed at my hosting package.
Yeah.
She wants to change that in the future, like I have this big package but only for a year.
Yeah.
She wants to change that in the future. Does she use all her stuff if she points it at another site? Or can you just copy the files?
Yeah, you totally should be able to copy any of that. But either way, she'll still have full control over, even though you're hosting it.
Yeah,
on
no,
your
she'll,
system.
yeah, I just wanna make sure that if eventually she wants to
Yeah.
host it somewhere else or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
that,
You could probably
just
copy
all
it
the
over.
files,
Yeah.
See, I just don't want you to lose any of your content that you, that, like I want it to look the exact same or whatever.
So that's another thing.
So can you like, how limited is it on .com? Like you can you change the font and everything or?
Well, it
like,
depends on
hard
the
code
theme.
it, or-
It depends on.
Yeah, like but even like your options are so limited.
But
Like
yeah.
I can't even change the color of the font.
On some of them.
Yeah. Like I don't want orange links. Ew.
Yeah.
Could you hard code that though?
You could. I think so. In customize. So depending on.
But then to customize you have to have
Yeah.
a premium
Yeah.
account.
So that's so the .com free. The disadvantage is very.
How much
I,
is this?
sorry, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's like the most
But-
basic I've ever seen in my life.
You're like halfway. Cause the other one, what's the one that's blue? When
Which
you're
one?
when you're not using your own. There's like a blue version of WordPress. Like why do I have a blue one?
Oh, you're just talking about this.
Oh yeah, I'm just
Oh,
on the
sorry.
dashboard.
Yeah.
If you click like anything here.
Why is my dashboard blue?
Yeah, this is
This?
like
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
She's
'cause I was
just
on-
the admin.
Yeah, so I
Oh.
didn't okay.
I never used this.
So let's click on themes here and see if it's a difference, but I doubt it.
So. No, because they try to keep those two.
You go by housing package for less than that.
You can buy a hosting package for less, but the thing is, you have to buy something put on the host
Yeah.
as well. So, if you're thinking of building your own, like personally outside of school, like outside of this project or anything, for the purpose of the project, it's a, don't worry about the fact that you can get super creative with this stuff. Like the fact that you can learn how to use the backend is good enough. But
Pretty anal.
but if you
I just like to type in W.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to see one minute of it?
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's exactly what you want. Right? Perfect. And it has this, which we were just talking about in class. Carousel. Yeah, but it's perfect. Nice. So,
I did let you know on Community last week.
No worries. Oh, no, no worries. The community tech fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd that
Yeah,
go?
it was pretty crazy. I didn't expect there to be so many people.
Yeah.
Like,
Those things are usually pretty jammed.
Yeah, that was my first job fair going to, but I guess they had brought over a big busload of students from the university
Yeah.
as well. So that,
This kind of got crazy, yeah. Did we were there? Our booth was on
yeah, I
5
couldn't find it. I don't know.
Oh, really?
There was just so many people,
Yeah.
and I was trying to talk to a bunch of people, but because I
Sure.
was gonna stop by and
Sure. Just say hello. Yeah.
So
I wasn't there myself,
yeah,
but
since you were just a good
yeah, that's right. You got it. Yeah, it was on a Tuesday. That's why I couldn't go because it was a Tuesday night.
Yeah, there were
Yeah,
also
that's fine.
some people from Toronto, I guess.
Oh, good. Good.
I think it was mostly like tennis startup.
Yeah, which makes sense for community tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they do. So
But there were big companies like Scotia and
Oh, good.
TV. And
Cool.
Got like their massive booths
Yeah.
right up front and
Oh.
all their gear and everything. So sometimes it's a good place to like get a little.
totally, it was
Fans or
swag.
whatever.
Yeah, totally. Did you catch the recording from last week?
Yes.
Okay,
I
good.
watched that.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, great. No worries. So whenever you miss a class, just
Yeah.
the recording will be up within 24 hours. So
Yeah, it's
Just
good
keep
that
an
I
eye.
checked it because I didn't realize both assignments that there's two.
Yes.
So then
That's right.
Yeah.
And the reason I had to do that, unfortunately, was because there's one assignment where you start using WordPress that I try to give a lot of time for,
Right.
and so I wanted to have everyone have enough time to work on that one, so I had to make some of them. Well, only the first two actually do
Yeah,
at the same time.
And they kind of build on each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So
Yeah, I think it's
Anyway.
good doing them together because they're so close.
they are that it makes sense really. It could be one big assignment, but I wanted to make it two separate ones.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All good.
Oh, to link your I think it.
Yeah, it's
So the Facebook is
called Meet.
doing an alien.
I mean, building materials for this year to design activities covers. Yeah, the Vine, like if you can just Vine will decide. Yes. Yeah, so we
Okay, folks. Let's get back to it. Laura, sir, do you mind grabbing that door again, please?
That was me, I was last. Couldn't just yell back.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, Laura.
All right. Navigation. This is a fun one for me personally because I absolutely love sites that are easy to navigate and absolutely hate sites that are difficult to navigate. Just because it's the nature of my job that I look at a lot of websites all the time. And so the ones, especially the new ones that I've never seen before or companies that I've never heard of, the ones that have taken a lot of time to think about the way they design their navigation, I think I really applaud, because it's difficult, folks. It's a very difficult thing to do, because as you remember from some previous classes, right, you want to start to use words that people will understand. And sometimes if I'm not the target customer, then they're going to start using some words that I don't really understand, and so it can get confusing. So in information architecture, I'd explain to you about the importance of understanding three things: the user, the context, and the content, aka the who, the what, and then the why sort of thing. And so any good navigation always starts with the person in mind, right? Just like a lot of things that I've told you about in this course. If you know the person or the profile that you're going after, and you know the way they speak, you know the words that they understand, the words that they use most commonly, if you use that in your navigation, and you use simple language as opposed to sometimes what companies can get caught up in is words that they use internally. So jargon, you know, that they know, that they think other people know too. They might start using those words on their website and then realize, oh, wait a minute. No one actually knows what that means, or only we think of it that way. So you'll see some websites that follow this stuff, but the websites that use simple language that we can all understand, even if we're not in the target customer profile, those are typically the ones that are easier to navigate. And then there are some standard conventions, things like design, from a design perspective, that are usually pretty standard across a lot of different websites. So if you see a logo at the top left-hand corner of a website and you click it, what does everyone in this room think would happen? Homepage, right? So that's pretty standard stuff. You expect, if there is a logo, that you can click it, first of all. And then you expect that if you do click it, it's going to take you back to the homepage. Right? And that's purely convention. Like, how did that even happen in the first place? How did we all know? Can you remember the first time you ever realized that that was a thing? Probably not. But it's because it's just being designed in so many different websites now that it's just normal for it to be the common thing to happen.
I think it's the same thing with those 3 lines that are
On a mobile device?
Yeah.
Right. We're going to talk about those 3 lines tonight. Those 3 lines have a fun name in mobile design. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Yeah, for the navigation itself, so the actual menu, whatever it looks like, ideally you can click on some things in it. So that's kind of important, as opposed to it just being words that you can't click on. And then the use of breadcrumbs. Does people know what breadcrumbs are when it comes to website design? Have you heard of that term? And can someone tell the class what that term is? What that term means? Anyone? Okay, I'm going to draw it for you, because I don't think any of the examples that I have up on the board, on the slides rather, actually show it to you.
Is that like trail at the top?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so it's the trail at the top. What that means is, let's assume I'm on the home page of a site, and then I click on to go to another page, and then I click on another page after that. That third page that I'm on, at the top of the page, or close to the top, you might see something that looks like this. Let's say I'm on the careers page of a website, okay? I've gone from the home page, I click the About button, and under the About button I clicked on the careers page, and now the information that I'm seeing here is the careers information, but the little breadcrumb, or the thing above it, shows me how I got there. Right, so if at any point I want to go to the About, or if I want to go to Home, I can click those buttons. There'll also be an entire layer of navigation at the top above it, but this specific trail is called a breadcrumb. And why is it useful? Why is it good? Because sometimes, if your site's pretty big, people can get lost. Right? You think of the story of Hansel and Gretel, is it? They use the trail of breadcrumbs. Same kind of idea.
That's where it comes
Where it comes from, yeah. Same kind of idea. You don't want to get lost on big websites, and so having breadcrumbs, typically the bigger the site, the more often you're going to see a breadcrumb.
I think though the crows ate the breadcrumbs.
Sorry?
And then they could find their way back, so they ate stones the next time.
Crows. You got to watch for those online crows, folks. Just keep an eye. All right, so let's look at some examples of good navigation and just navigation in general. So specifically with this page, if you can, maybe you have it in front of your screen, if you read those words, the words that they're choosing to use in the navigation, I'd love to hear your comments on some of those words.
I don't really understand why they want birthdays.
Okay? Got a confusion about birthdays. Great point. Anything else? Yeah. Andy.
I'm not sure why water is exactly clear.
Why water?
Why safe water? Why
Beautiful.
water?
Great. Amazing how one word can literally just change how you frame something.
And also what you said earlier about that button, My Charity Water, like it's not obvious what that does.
Right. Yeah, it isn't because, especially because on the other side is the logo, which also says something close. It says Charity Water. I think I know what that button does now, but
And there's also an About Us, which is what I would have thought it does, because it's like company name, so
Sure.
you can like talk about the company.
right. Laura, are you familiar with this company? Have you heard of them before? Yeah. Have you used them at all? Have you done a charity campaign for what? No. Okay. So I'm pretty sure, and you might actually, if you go on the website now, it might be different than what this is. This is a fairly old screenshot, so it doesn't really matter. But I think what that blue button does, and what leads me to believe this, by the way, is because of the word "my." It says "My Charity Water" at the top. I think it's a login button for you to check on your campaign. Because the blue button here says "Start a campaign," which means it's like the sign up versus login situation. Blue button here, the big one, is sign up, and the blue button at the top is login. I think that's what it is. It says My Charity Water at the top there, so that's kind of what leads me to believe that it is. But some good points, right? So the words birthdays, why water, maybe. You know, some other words make a lot of sense. Donate, about us, maybe store. I'm guessing you can buy products, support the charity, or buy products from the charity. Water projects, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
We changed it now to login and sign up.
Okay, there you go. Interesting. Okay, let's look at the Dropbox for Business. This is an interesting one. How many people are used to seeing, if this is a desktop or if you're looking at it on your laptop, a navigation on the left-hand side of the screen? Now earlier I told you this follows the F pattern, so that's great, but now if you think of the navigation, the way most navigation is designed on websites, where is it usually? Sorry, top
Top.
or bottom?
Website top.
Website top.
Mobile.
That's right. Yeah, website top. Mobile, it's usually like center of the screen, or it takes up a bit of the screen or something. Totally. So you could argue that they might have done this with mobile in mind. Great. If so, great. But in this case, this is not a mobile screenshot that I'm looking at. It is a desktop screenshot. So when you look at it, it's got stuff on the left. That's fine. It's fine. It's a bit different though. It's a bit different than what folks are expecting. Hopefully it still operates the same way though. Okay, and some of the words on there say overview, users, resources, customers, pricing, and contact. Anyone want to comment on those words? For instance, the word users and the word customers. Anyone want to try and guess at what the difference is between those two? Is anyone confused by that? Yeah? It is. Sorry. Totally. It is uses. But even then, actually, no, it could be. It should totally be like applications, and then customers could be stories of the uses. Totally. My eyes are quite bad, so thank you for clarifying that.
I would have thought it was users too.
Sorry?
I would have thought it was easier.
especially since I said
You
it.
just look at it quickly and it makes sense to say users.
Right. But then when you see the word customers, it's like, wait, what? What do you mean? Yeah, uses. That's right. Now, you could argue in this situation, again, why did they choose the word uses? Could they have debated choosing the word applications or solutions or something? You know? Or yeah, why? Why Dropbox for Business? Or totally. Right? There's so many different options that you can think of when it comes to choosing words for navigation. It is quite honestly just an art in itself to be able to write headings that make sense. It's pretty amazing. Okay. This next one, super fun. Probably something that you haven't paid attention to until now. You probably might have been annoyed by it many times, and I'm going to show you now why you have been annoyed by it. So this, folks, is something called a tunnel. In navigation design, there are things called tunnels. You could probably imagine what it is already.
I don't like those, yeah.
No one does. No one likes tunnels, but they exist. So here's how they work. You probably know already. If I think this is Amazon. Can't be sure. I can't remember where I got this. But basically, the idea is on the left-hand side, if I tried to hover over sports and fitness, and let's say I did hover over it, and that was the menu that showed up on the right, if I wanted to click on whatever the last option is, I can't actually go the fastest route. So point A to point B, the fastest route to get from sports and fitness here to this thing here is point A to point B, right? Fastest way. Nope. Sorry, can't do that because when my mouse goes into this little dead zone here, what happens? This menu disappears. And then another menu opens up because I'm actually hovering over this silly thing, party and crafts or whatever it is. So it's just super annoying because it's forcing me through a tunnel. It's forcing me to go from here into here and then down. Right? This is an example of how you would avoid tunnels. Unfortunately, there isn't a bigger screenshot here, but a way you could avoid it is by creating a menu where instead of a menu showing up when I hover over something, I actually have to click it. So I click it, it shows up and it stays there. It doesn't matter where I move my mouse, the menu stays there. And then if I click on something else, whatever opens up stays there. That's just a different way of avoiding a tunnel is by creating menus that are static as opposed to moving. And we're going to try this out right now. So what I'd like you to do is using the computer in front of you, I'd like you to try this out. Go to Dell.ca, and from their homepage, the homepage of Dell.ca, I'd like you to find their latest tablet for work. Pay really close attention to what you are doing to find that tablet. Really close attention. And then for Apple, I'd go to apple.com/ca and find the latest iPad. And then let's talk about the differences in your experience. When you've had a chance to do it and you have some thoughts, just raise your hand and let's talk about it. Laura?
So on Dell,
Yeah.
so I just went to products.
Yep.
And then tablets and then scrolled over to the second one.
Okay.
Right?
Pretty
Pretty easy.
easy.
Yep.
Okay.
On Apple, I clicked the iPad. And then I guess the iPad Pro.
Okay, good. Yeah. Latest iPad. I don't actually know. I think it is the iPad Pro. That's right. That's right. It wasn't the intention wasn't necessarily like a treasure hunt to see if you could find the latest iPad because I think it's the iPad Pro. but it's more the process of getting there that I want you to pay attention to. Okay, so
We had to click the iPad.
okay,
And then the options came up. The
Okay.
other one, it just opened up and gave you the options on which one you wanted to click.
okay,
So it's different.
slightly different. Did you have any thoughts there, Cora?
The same thing. I mean, for me, it was easier in the Apple.
Okay.
Dell.
Yep.
You just click iPad and they have little images right there.
To show you what they are.
Show
Yep,
you,
yep.
And in the other one, I just need to put products, then tablet,
Yep.
and then tablet for work,
Yep.
and then you see.
And then you see the stuff. Okay, so anyone have any other thoughts, by the way, on the different experiences between Dell and Apple, trying to find the latest, in this case, tablet for work versus tablet for whatever, personal use, work use. Okay, so let's quickly just take a look at it ourselves. Let's open this up in a new tab here. So Dell.ca.
They made it look pretty similar.
You mean the tablets
Yeah.
themselves?
No, like the homepage.
Oh, the home pages.
Like in some sense.
Mm-hmm. We've got a carousel here, folks. Okay, so so take a look. Under products, okay. There I am. And then what was it? Tablets, here we go. And for work. So watch what happens if I go in any other direction other than the direction they're forcing me to go. Okay, so obviously I had to click products first or hover over products first. And then I had to go to tablets. And I'm going to go to work, that's no problem. But what if I accidentally did this? Oh, damn it. And I'm not in tablets anymore. There I am. And there you go. So you see, my mouse is having to follow this exact path. And sure, you might not think that's annoying because of the amount of times you've had to do it now, but really this is forcing you to choose the path that they're setting for you, which for a user is not always A, the fastest way to get there, and B, the easiest way to get there, because in some cases, if you want to get there really fast, right, you're going to want to try and go from here to here to here. Like, you might move your mouse a little bit further off, you might miss the target, and then you're screwed, you have to start over. Whereas with Apple, you know, when I move my mouse over any of these things at the top, nothing happens. They just highlight to show me that I can click on them. That's great. I click on one of them, and it opens up options for me. And even then, I can hover over all these things all day and nothing will happen. But if I click on one, then I go into it.
I think Apple has the advantage of a limited product line.
Totally.
And because it's so recognizable, they can get away with a lot more. Like,
Right.
I thought, like, for Dell, I don't know how many computers they have, but I thought it does help that they break it down into, like, the two categories. Like,
Right.
for home, for work, because if you're not familiar with all their products, then it does.
Right. And they could do the exact same thing. They don't have to change the way this menu is set up in any way. But just imagine, like Apple, if you couldn't actually open this menu until I clicked on the word products. So if I click on the word products, and then this stays like this, and then if I click on the word tablets, it stays like that, then no matter where I move my mouse, it's going to stay there, right? And it's a really, really tiny thing.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't do it, just so everyone understands, and this is kind of a devil's advocate, the reason they don't do it is they'll argue I have to click too many times,
Yeah.
as opposed to just hovering, which is faster.
So that's considered a tunnel, right?
Exactly.
I think a click is preferable in this case. Like, I'd rather
Totally.
click than, like,
And keep it, right?
Yeah.
Apple's doing it, so they're forcing you to click to actually look at the products. But as you can see, it's a navigation decision, it's a design decision, but it's a pretty smart one, I think, on their part. So navigation tunnels, folks. This is the nature of some websites, and I should just suggest to you, as best you can, try to avoid them, because people might not overtly know why they're getting annoyed by your design, but if they are, and it has to do with navigation. It could be because there's a tunnel there. Ingrid.
That's a question.
Yeah.
So, for Dell to have that and
Yep.
Is it a lot of work to avoid them, or would there be a specific
Hard to say.
reason? Yeah.
Hard to say. Hard to say. You know, hard to say exactly why. You might make the argument that a lot of companies have done this. Some really big companies, in fact, have done it like this. And to them, it might be the case that, so what, we annoy 10% of our users, you know? Like, most people know that it's a tunnel and they'll get it, right? It's not going to turn them off buying a laptop,
Okay.
right? They're just going to be annoyed for a few seconds and then follow the path that you're supposed to follow. But then there are the companies who care about that kind of stuff and design it completely differently, like Apple. So, yeah, I don't know, Ingrid, to be honest, whether they know it and they're aware of it and they're just not fixing it, or I think from a coding perspective, I don't think it's a huge thing to be able to design it differently.
Or if they just came with the theme and they're like not gonna bother.
Who knows? Okay, let's talk about color. Do we have any artists in the room? Self-proclaimed, or you like photography?
I can't even draw a stick.
Laura, 100%.
Artists, okay.
I called you out.
Great, great. Any photographers in the room?
That would be Laura.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Well, Laura, this might seem familiar to you, but maybe to other folks who aren't too familiar with different color schemes and patterns. How many of you have actually seen this thing here, known as a color wheel? This is a really simple version of one.
Hairdressers use it.
There you go. There you go. There are some that are far more complex than this, but this is a really basic one. I really like this one because it contains some really simple colors and it helps get the point across about the purpose of the wheel. So, the idea with this thing, the way you read a wheel, is colors that are opposite each other in the wheel, meaning across from each other, are complementary colors. So you use a complementary color when you want to create some contrast. And so let's take blue and orange. If you put an orange button on a blue background, it'll probably stand out. Okay, so that's use of contrast in color. But colors that are next to each other, what's known as analogous colors. So they are usually used to show continuity or to show that something is seamless. So if you have blues and purples on a page and maybe even some greens, all using the same color, all on the same page, you might use that to show something that's flowing or something. If a web page starts with blue and moves to purple and moves to green, could be showing flowing. Whereas if you try to put a purple box or a green box on a blue background, it might not stand out as much as an orange box or a red box. Okay, so remember the breathe thing that we did earlier? The blue breathe versus the white breathe? That's using this same principle. Right, where you have a color, and in that case I used blue and purple on the one that was harder to see because they're next to each other, and then I used blue and white as a big contrast to show you that you could read it because it was a little easier to see. Okay, very, very simple stuff. This next slide shows you some associations that people have with certain colors. Not all of these are always true all the time, but for the most part they are true. They are pretty good. The source for this, by the way, is at the bottom of the page. So, a lot of common ones, obviously green, used for the environment, also happens to be used for money or growth. Red is always a big one about passion, power, stop signs, so sometimes it can signal danger to. Blue, a lot of times associated with trust. Well, purple, if you think of a Crown Royal bag, I think it's a purple bag. Prince, the musical artist, happens to use the color purple quite a lot. Spirituality, when you think of a guy like that. Creativity is also another word that comes to mind. And then black and white. Black could be pretty formal. Black tie affair, tuxedos are black. Funerals, a lot of people wear black. And then for white, wedding dress, purity, goodness, freshness, simplicity. Yeah. So let's take a look at some examples again. And let's talk through some of the use of color maybe on some of these things.
Funny.
The starter campaign? The starter campaign being in
Yeah.
blue?
Like, wow.
Yeah. See, we looked at the same web page now, 4 or 5 times, but each time you're going to see something different, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good because it shows, again, that there's been a lot of thought put into the design of these things. And so the more you can pay attention to that stuff, the better you're going to be at designing your own stuff. Yeah, so the blue one is a particularly interesting one. The fact that they chose red right after that
Love.
is, yeah, you know, it could be a bunch of things, right?
Maybe
Yeah.
also because it draws your attention.
It totally does. How we talked about that idea of the fold thing and the fact that you don't want, you know, you don't want the page to end necessarily. They don't want it to end. And so they try to kind of shock you with this huge burst of red. If you look on an actual desktop, or if I look on my screen on my laptop, it doesn't look as dark red like it does on the projector there. It's a bit lighter, so it's not as harsh, but it's the same tone as the blue above it, so it's kind of interesting. This is Dropbox for Business. Literally only 2 colors.
You can trust them.
Simple and trustworthy is what we see there.
Even uses the word trust.
Exactly. I was just going to say, look at the words that they're using there, folks.
Like we're so easily manipulated.
You might not even realize. So hopefully after this course you will realize
Never look at a web.
and never look at the web again. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Yeah, so the first word in bold at the top there on their headline is the word securely. Which is interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. And then finally, Mint.com, a personal finance tool using the color green. Wouldn't you know it?
Money.
Wouldn't you know it? Yeah, money. That's right. Oh, and let's not forget our good friends at Conestoga College here.
Well, I think this one's funny because we must have got some new web developers because everything used to be this awful paint splash of like colorfulness,
Mhm.
and I'm like, it was awful.
Yeah. Now it's just nice and,
Now everything is crisp,
formal,
black, white.
you know.
So
Right,
we
not
did
trying to
get
be
people in
too-
design, so that's
Pardon
fine.
me?
We did get new people in
Good design,
so
good.
that's all design.
And you'll notice the use of color though on the bottom, trying to call your attention to some things there.
Those little airly things.
Pardon me?
Little
Yeah.
airly things.
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
For the most part, you know, the color schemes. Using a bit of gold there too is kind of interesting. I think that color has been with Conestoga for a while though. The C, the big C at the top,
Yeah,
that the
that's-
color of that C has been with the school
And
for a
then
while.
internationally, it's red.
Oh, cool. Okay. Interesting. Good to know. All right. We're going to move on to mobile. And so this section will probably take about, I don't know, try to be about 40 minutes or so here. And then we're going to get into some hands-on stuff with the wireframing. And that's what we're basically going to spend the rest of the night with. But with mobile, what I first wanted to do was bring up some stats and talk about some stats around how mobile as just a use of technology is rapidly increasing, I would say. It's an easy way to put it. And I'm going to show you different statistics that talk through this. So the first one here is just the number of global users of a mobile device versus a desktop device. So all this means is how many people around the world have access to a mobile phone versus a computer. Okay, and as you can see, back in, was it 2014? Yeah, 2014. 2 years ago, that bridge kind of got crossed, if you will. The lines got crossed. There was a point where mobile took over. More people in the world have mobile phones than they do computers. Okay. Now, what isn't on here is access to the internet. I haven't shown that, but I wanted to talk to you about that because what more and more companies are doing, even the likes of Google and whatnot, they're investing in the infrastructure to try and get more people online. And it's easier to get people who have phones online in some cases because they're easier to distribute, all of this stuff, whatever, and more people naturally, they have them. So trying to increase things like data coverage or free Wi-Fi. Google is actually, how many of you have heard of Google balloons, I think they're called, where they create a Wi-Fi device and they put it in a hot air balloon and they hover it over a specific country to try and give the country Wi-Fi. They're trying it in my home country of Sri Lanka, actually, which is interesting enough. But basically, they're trying to make an island or a third world country have more access to the internet, which is kind of interesting. Because they know even if they could create free Wi-Fi, you could use Wi-Fi on your mobile phone, so more people would have access to the internet. Okay. So this trend, coupled with the trend of more access to the internet, is going to become a really, really powerful thing over the next few years. This next slide is a percentage of mobile traffic compared to the percentage of global internet traffic. So all it's saying is that, let me try and read you the number here because the slide's kind of far away, but back in around 2014, 1 in every 4 visits to the internet as a whole, so 25%, 1 in every 4 visits to the internet as a whole was done from a mobile device. And this is globally. The stats that you're seeing here are taken from a company called Kleiner Perkins. They release a study every year called, I think it's like the Internet Study, or the Global Internet Study or something, like 160 slides worth of amazing data. This happened to be taken from their 2014 deck, I think. So this number has probably changed now, but I wanted to show you where the trend line was, because really it doesn't matter what the number is today. All it shows is that it's increasing, and that's really the point that I want to get across here, is that mobile traffic is taking up more and more of internet traffic as a whole. And if you think about yourself, right? How many times you use your mobile phone in a day versus maybe... Yeah, anything. Here's a question.
And does mobile include tablets?
Great question. I believe in that case, they are including tablets. And the reason for that is because I think it's because tablets are still considered, they are not considered a desktop device because of how portable they are and small they are compared to other desktops. Things like the iPad Pro, though, when you start getting into bigger screen sizes, that's where the line gets a little blurry, but I believe tablets is included. Good question. So take a look at this. In 2013, 3 years ago, a study by AOL, America Online, huge company out of the US, they did a study to try and figure out where 75% of mobile traffic comes from. So where are people, when they're looking at their mobile phones, where do we think, folks? Are they at home, are they at work, or are they somewhere in between? Are they in transit, going from home to work, going from work to home, going from home to a friend's place or something? Where are 75% of people when they're on their mobile phones? I want to do a survey here. So let's go home, let's go work, and let's go transit. You can only vote once. You cannot vote twice. Unique votes. How many people think it's home?
Okay, I go home.
Go home.
No.
2 people? Okay. How many people think it's work? 1, 2 more people, that's it?
I would work. Sorry.
Sorry? 3 people think it's work? Okay, so then the rest of you, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 people think it's in transit. Whoa, that's really bad looking 5. Okay. The answer is not in your slides, the answer is in my notes. The correct answer, ladies and gentlemen, is Home. Home.
When you have kids.
Home. Most people look at their phones when they are at home. Think about yourself. How many of you, first thing in the morning, check your phone? Last thing at night, very bad principle, but I do it anyway. Check your phone. You're on the couch, you're watching TV, you're checking your phone. You're looking up a recipe, you're looking at your phone. It is crazy. When I first looked at this study, actually it was a friend of mine who told me about this. We were away camping somewhere, and this study had come up. I can't remember whether it was this one or a Canadian one, but the results are always the same. And he said to me, like, where do you think most people are when they're looking at their mobile phone? To me, the answer was transit, obviously. Like, when we're at work, we're on our computers. When we're at home, we're just not doing anything at all with our mobile phones. Complete lie. The truth is, yeah, it's home. And by a large margin, obviously, 75%, pretty huge. So just keep that in mind, folks. When people are looking at their phones, a lot of time they're actually at home, which is just a little bizarre to me. But anyway, that's what the stats show. This is a fun one, because this has to do with a different trend for online video as well. And so what this shows is the number of video plays, again, that were done on a mobile device versus the number of plays that were done online. So online video plays, mobile share of online video plays, and then the other percentage is time. But essentially, if we look at the main number here, this green line, it's showing you that almost at 25%, and this is 2013, so now it's probably there. But again, 25% of the time, when you're looking at a video online, 1 in 4 times it's going to be on your mobile phone. So again, think about if you're at home and you happen to look up a video about whatever it is, or someone's sharing something with you. Someone shares you a funny video on Facebook or via email or something. You click on it. 1 in 4 times, as stats say, you're going to be on your phone when you watch the video. So it's kind of interesting too, in the way that people are designing video now. Right? They have to think not a lot of people are going to be watching it on a big screen, so they might have to start designing content to fit smaller screens. It's an interesting thing in video design. If you're into that, it's certainly something to keep in mind. This is a fun one. This is specific countries around the world and where mobile has penetrated. Let me see if I can pull a number for you that I thought was really interesting here. So around the world globally, top 15 countries of smartphone uses in the world has 65% penetration in their entire population. So what that means is, on average, more than half of the population, so about 2 in every 3 people has a mobile phone, specifically a smartphone in these countries. Now, if you take a look at number 7, Saudi Arabia, the population penetration is 110%. Does anyone have any idea what that means? The mobile penetration in Saudi Arabia is 110%. Ingrid?
Possibly having more than one phone.
People have more than one phone. That's right. That is absolutely right. Everyone has at least one. A lot of people have more than one.
Look at UAE. They're 160%.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't.
Everybody's got 2
There
phones.
you go. Yeah, that's right. Oh man. Great. Canada is sitting in the 50s. Yeah. Apparently Canada still cares a little bit about face-to-face interactions, so only 50% of us are. All right, so this next one is a social platform. Wow, again, I apologize for how dark that is. Some of you might have heard of some of these social platforms. Obviously, Facebook is one that's known to a lot of people. QQ and QZone, I believe, are Chinese social platforms. WhatsApp, how many of you here use WhatsApp or have heard of WhatsApp? It's just a chat messenger app. Great one to communicate with people from around the world. Facebook Messenger, and then WeChat, again, I believe is a Chinese platform. But if you look at 4 of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe QQ is, or QZone. The big ones after WeChat, so these ones here, these 6, 4 of them are mobile primarily / only applications. So Facebook Messenger, for instance, has its own app, standalone app on a phone. So a lot of these are standalone mobile applications, which means that people using social media now, just in general, a lot of them are using it solely on their mobile phones, which is interesting. Very interesting.
Well, a lot of the social media apps aren't even, like, the Instagram on the desktop is like, okay, so not
Right. Mm.
I
Right.
know, it's so big and weird.
But I think our generation, like for me, I have a 9-year-old and he
Mhm.
steals my computer all the time. So for me to actually get the computer, like that's why I use my phone
Mm.
all the time. So
Sure.
I feel like because there's a generation shift going on,
Yep.
that I mean it's making us use other tools
Sure.
because we can't have 5 computers in our house, right?
Sure. Totally. Yeah. I mean, in a lot of cases, you know, when you think about, again, this trend to more people just owning phones, it's cheaper to get a phone in a lot of cases, especially if it's just a basic smartphone, than it is a laptop. Very easy. So, most children, now young ones, will probably get a phone before a laptop.
Almost 10-year-olds already asking.
Right.
And I'm debating one's too soon.
Right. And so then if you think of from a company building apps or, software companies building websites or even just software in general, when they've got a whole generation of people who are growing up knowing how to use a phone before using a computer or maybe even before other things, why not design for mobile first? Or why not design for mobile only in some cases? It's really, really interesting. This slide here just talks about chat applications. So things like the use of WhatsApp, the use of Snapchat. This is kind of old, a bit old now. I'm sure it's a bit bigger now. But how many users are on WhatsApp? 400 million monthly active users, which is just a little insane. I think Snapchat, these numbers are much, much bigger now. I should really update this with more recent numbers. But things like the ones in China, Line is in Japan, which is almost at 400 million. China, Tencent, WeChat is about 350 million monthly users. Just think of the amount of people. So there are more people, using these kinds of applications than, that's 10 times the population of Canada, folks. They're using these applications every month, which is just kind of I think these numbers are just a little insane. Mobile commerce. This is an interesting one. This is taken from Shopify. Shopify is a great Canadian company. Where do you look and perhaps even buy things online now? A lot of times, we talked about the 0 moment of truth, where it happens. For the first time, a lot of times it'll be on a mobile device. And this is saying, Shopify, this is data from 13 maybe, that talks about where the actual sales came from. Where were people when they bought things? Half are on a mobile device, half are on a computer. So the argument that you need a big screen to be able to see and shop online, not necessarily true anymore. You can do it from the convenience of your mobile phone, because most phones now, most smartphones have a nice screen anyway. They have a pretty big screen. It's bright. You can see all the things you need to see. And companies have started to design websites and such to actually fit the screen nicely. And we're going to look at that in a few minutes.
Do you think that means that more people are doing impulse shopping? Because normally you think people
Good
sit
question.
down at their desk, at their laptop.
Right. Good question. Yeah. I don't really know statistically, but I can certainly tell you that especially if you are a fan of certain networks like Instagram or even Twitter, these companies are designing products in such a way to encourage impulse buying. So how many of you use Instagram here, just by show of hands? Okay. And you've seen Instagram ads?
Oh, so annoying.
Right. Now imagine that they weren't annoying and instead they were tailored to show you things that you were perhaps looking to buy online. And additionally, instead of just a like button, there happened to be a buy button or a browse button.
And they are tailored, and I know that this is really creeping what I'm doing, and it's making me mad because it's like I want to go on Instagram to creep people and things that I like, not buy stuff.
It only takes one person to click buy, and then the game's all over,
For
folks.
sure. And like by accident once I clicked it, it started downloading an app. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think these actually work, and they're gonna keep doing it. Oh.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a bit about Facebook and their domination of mobile advertising. So, just again, show of hands, how many use Facebook here? And how many have used just Facebook on a mobile device? Okay. So, fair amount of you. Just to check, you check updates or whatever. So, Facebook, most of their money comes from advertising, as you can probably guess. A lot of stuff on the desktop. If you're on your Facebook on your desktop, you look on the right-hand side, you'll probably see some ads. You look in the main part of the body, you're going to see some ads, whether you realize it or not. And then on the mobile device, it's all in the middle, so you just have one stream, and some of the stuff that you see are ads, some aren't. But I want to show you some numbers. And again, the slides only have certain numbers. My notes have the rest, because I wanted to try and blow your brains out with these numbers. So Q1, meaning the first 3 months of 2013, so 3 years ago, Facebook made $438 million just on mobile ads. Just on mobile ads. In the process of 3 months, $438 million. They made $1 billion on the non-mobile ads. Okay, so you combine those two, you made about $1.5 billion in the process in the time frame of 3 months. Bless you. About a third of that came from mobile, and the rest, 2/3, came from non-mobile. Okay.
Question, how does that like compare with that other stat you just showed us that's pretty much 50-50?
Of
Is it-
people buying?
Yeah.
Okay, so the difference is that ads are just being shown, but people buying stuff is actually people going out to wait, and there are two different sources. Shopify is a company that hosts e-commerce sites,
Yeah.
and Facebook is just showing you ads.
Oh.
Yeah, good question. Good clarification there. Now, what I want people to guess at is, what do you think these two numbers are 2 years later? So in Q2 of 2015, which is 2 years later, how much money do you think Facebook made in the process of 3 months, this happened to be 2 years later, just on mobile ads, and then compare that to desktop ads? Anyone want to take a guess?
Over $1 billion
Over $1 billion. On which one?
on mobile.
On mobile. So Andy guesses over 1 billion. Oh, should say billion. B. Any other guesses?
Over 2 billion?
Over 2 billion. Ingrid. This is the Price is Right. We're playing Price is Right rules, folks.
I'll do some of the crowd.
Okay, anyone want to guess the desktop? Or the non-mobile, I should say. 1.2 billion. Was that 2 years ago? Take a guess. Take a guess. What are you going to say? Amber.
I don't know, because it's like way too much money.
Listen, if you get it exactly right, I will give you that amount of money.
Oh,
I actually have it all in this cupboard right now. Okay, what will you guess, Amber? Are you going to take a guess?
I'm gonna say like 850 million.
That for
For
non-mobile.
non.
So you think it went
I
down?
think it went down because
Okay.
it went to mobile.
Okay, 850 million. That's nice. I like it. It's bold. It's good. Okay. So, mobile number. $2.89 billion for mobile. So Ingrid, congratulations. You're moving on to the Showcase Showdown. And non-mobile. 912 million. So you are correct. It did go down from 2 years back.
Yeah, but it was millions, that's nothing.
So, yes, totally, Amber. Trust your gut. Your gut said that mobile took over, and it did. In fact, it's crushing non-mobile right now. Crushing it. So, non-mobile 2 years ago, or 2013, over $1 billion. Now, just over 900 million, or more recently, last year, just over 900 million. Mobile, on the other hand, 2.8, almost 3 billion. And this is just in 3 months. These are just numbers from the course of 3 months in a year.
That's maybe why he was giving all his money away. When he was
Anyway.
a baby.
So yeah, it just, kind of blows your mind. Like, some of these things
Is
sometimes.
that the trend that you are seeing kind of in all industries, kind of mobile versus non-mobile?
In terms of advertising revenue?
Yeah.
Good question. I haven't looked at other sources per se. Like Google, for instance, would be a great source to look at. But because Facebook's revenue is primarily generated from that, that's where I went to first. I could look, but if I were to guess, I would say it's probably close. Not necessarily that desktop is declining, maybe, but mobile is probably certainly increasing like crazy. Yeah. So, here's a question for you folks. If you have looked at the slides and you've looked ahead, try not to cheat and give away the answers, but why do we think that it's a good idea to start designing with a mobile mindset first? Anyone want to shout out some thoughts? Why do you think it's a good idea to start designing with a mobile mindset first? Obviously, you can use any of the stats, so everything's pointing in that direction. That's obvious. What else? Why else? Ingrid.
We just talked about that, as Amber mentioned, that today's generation, they're going to have a mobile phone before they have their first
Okay.
laptop, desktop.
Great.
So kind of capturing the age and
Right.
early customers.
Right. Yep. Generation, you think if you're thinking long term, 10, 15 years out, right, the kids who are 9, 10 years old now, when they're 20, 25, if they're working, they're going to take up the majority of the workforce that time. That's what they'll be used to.
Well, it's more
Yeah.
accessible too,
Mm.
because not everywhere, like a laptop, you kind of need Wi-Fi
Right.
or something like to connect,
Yep.
and it's not everywhere
Totally.
yet. So your mobile phone, you can use data.
If you have a data
it's
plan.
accessible pretty much everywhere.
Right. Totally. You have a data plan. Ingrid, what else?
I know a number of people that have two phones, one strictly personal and one strictly work phone.
Okay.
So
Okay.
again, to be able to capture, obviously on the work phone, you're going to be looking at certain things.
Yeah.
On the internet as well as on
Sure.
your home phone. So again, two different streams.
Okay. Good. Yeah, 2 different streams. What else? What else, folks? What else? Think maybe now. Maybe some more hardware related or things like that. Things like if you think about the actual concept of phones and now try to think again, why would you choose, maybe let's talk about just design because this happens to be the class on design, specifically website design. Why would you choose to design for a mobile phone first? Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Maybe to make it work better in the mobile than in the desktop.
Okay.
Because sometimes when you design first in the desktop and you then the mobile, it's just like, it doesn't seem like right, the things, and it was not designed for that.
Good.
So
Good.
maybe just think first in the mobile and then.
That's right. It's easier, right? It's a little bit easier. It's smaller. Okay, so it might be a bit easier. To deal with a smaller screen first, then start looking a bit bigger, and then a bit bigger, and so on. Okay. Yeah, Bill, what do you think?
I was gonna say, I actually disagree
Okay.
with like the mobile first idea, and I know it's all like trendy now to be mobile first, and I know Google changed its
Mhm.
algorithms to favor sites that are mobile friendly, but I actually really miss having like a desktop view on a mobile device because I
Mm.
like the idea of zooming into what I want. I don't like this idea of clicking that 3-line thing and then it just extra clicks. I just like yeah, it's a little annoying sometimes, but I just like that context idea. It's all in front of me, and if all I need to do is just pinch a little bit and go where I want to, I'd rather do that than click like 5 things.
Seriously. I think you might be appeasing about 5% of the design audience that's out there. But hey, there are companies that still do that.
I think it's a passing trend.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
my theory.
Okay.
but-
Okay, we will see. We will see. Here are some thoughts as to why you might want to think mobile first. Think of where people have their first, that zero moment of truth in most cases. Someone tells you about something. I tell you about something in this class. You happen to be sitting in front of laptops, so that might be cheating, and computers. But if you weren't and we were conversing in the hallway or something, one of us might pull out our phone to look something up. Screen sizes are changing a lot now. So if you start by designing for the smallest screen size, then you might argue it could be easier to build up from that. You think about the speed of the internet now, especially on our computers, maybe to our home phone, to our computers at home, the speed might be pretty quick, but cellular data, and if you're just using data on your phone and you're accessing a web page just using data, the speeds are also getting quite fast. And they'll only continue to get faster over time. Those aren't going to slow down per se. We talked about this is where people are, right? More children, if we take them as an example, they might get access to a phone versus a computer first. And then you think about that 75% usage at home stat. A lot of people are using it when they're at home. And so if you want to try and reach someone when they're kind of sitting on their couch, you might target them through their mobile device as opposed to on their couch. Google announced something really interesting just recently. Maybe I'll bring it up in the next class. It's about one of their new ad products that they're going to introduce called Instant, where it allows you to take advantage of something that's happening, like the Super Bowl, let's say, or the Grammys. Something big happens. You know how companies are doing things where technical term for it is called newsjacking, where something big happens on TV or in some huge big public thing, and then some company will create an ad for it, or like Oreo did this a long time ago with the Super Bowl, where there was a power outage at the Super Bowl, and then Oreo created an ad and shared on Twitter that said you can still dunk in the dark or something like that. It was something really cute, really small, really quick, but super timely, and it happened to be right at the moment of, at the right moment where the lights went out. So what did everyone do? They turned to Twitter or they turned to the internet and they started going crazy. So Oreo hopped in at that time and did something relevant. They created a relevant piece of, a commercial message. And Google has now created a product to help companies do that. I'll see if I can find the article for you and send it because it's super, super relevant to this topic. Integrated marketing, this idea that, again, if I see an ad for something on TV or listen to it on the radio or see a poster for it, or I go into the store and I see, signage for it, I expect to see the same type of stuff when I look it up on my mobile phone. Right? That's just how we think now, right? It's how we make connections between a brand or a company or a campaign. We know it's the same thing because it looks the same regardless of where we see it. It's using the same colors, the same words, the same pictures, that sort of thing. Mobile is no different. Okay, let's talk about some design differences between them. Let's start with watching this video.
Great job, guys. Let's get moving. Formulas are one thing, but allowing yourself to adapt to this new way of designing is a whole new concept to get used to. As a web designer, it's important you embrace that your website is going to look different in various browsers and on different devices. Forget about trying to make your website look the same in every browser or device, and focus instead on allowing your website to break, mold, and conform to the size and dimensions your user wants to experience it at. So we've been throwing around a lot of buzzwords like fixed, fluid, adaptive, and responsive. But these words aren't interchangeable. Let's break them down and make sure we understand the difference between them before we dive into the code. Fixed websites have a set width and resizing the browser or viewing it on a different device won't have an effect on the way your website looks. Fluid websites are built using percentages for widths, making columns relative to one another in the browser. This allows it to scale up and down fluidly. Adaptive websites aren't necessarily built on a fluid grid. They can also use a fixed grid and introduce media queries to target specific device sizes, like smaller monitors, tablets, and smartphones. Responsive websites are built on a fluid grid and use media queries to control the design and its content as it scales up or down with a browser or device. Let's take a quick quiz and review what we've learned so far.
No need for a quiz. Okay, so that might have been pretty quick. Might have been your first exposure to the concept of some of those words, responsive design, things like that. We're actually going to play around a bit now. So if you can go to, I'll pull that up a bit bigger. Go to the following URL, liquid apsive, A-P-S-I-V-E, liquid, A-P-S-I-V-E.com. I'll give you a second, give everyone a second to just get on that site, liquid apsive. And I'll pull it up on my screen up here too. Okay, what I'd like you to do is use your mouse, okay? And on the top right-hand corner, there's a drop-down menu to show you what type of design you're in. So switch between the different designs, then use your mouse and drag the size of the screen to make it smaller. So drag it to the left like this and just watch what happens to the content as you move through the different types of designs. So I happen to be on responsive, do it for adaptive, see how it changes. Move your mouse over, make it a smaller screen, and see how it changes. Don't worry too much about the words and stuff, obviously. All that stuff is just placeholder text to show you. Anyone prefer any particular one of them?
I like adaptive and static.
Adaptive and static, okay. What happens to static when you make it smaller?
Okay, the parts go away. It won't fit.
I like the report.
Like you're missing like half the screen, so it's like,
But Bia would say she likes that because then she can, you know, zoom in, scroll around.
oh, it's squished.
Okay.
Words all went all crazy.
I like responsive
So-
or adaptive.
This is a summary of basically what's happening on the screen there. The hard one to really get around is the difference sometimes between these three. Just think of responsive as a combination of both of these two things. Right? With adaptive, what you're going to see is it's going to be really sudden. The changes that happen when you're on an adaptive screen are going to be really sudden because in the code, what the code is saying is when a screen is X size, show X. When a screen is Y size, show Y. So that's why it might be the same, and then suddenly it changes because you've got to that point. And that point is specifically called a break point in the design. It's a really interesting concept. But with fluid, it starts moving the minute you start moving your screen. So it's sort of shifting around. Think of it like a, you know, actual liquid in a can. It's sort of like that. But it gets really weird when you get to a smaller screen because it's kind of like it gets really long. It's because it's not, the design isn't fundamentally changing. But then responsive, on the other hand, is the best of both worlds because And the final bullet, responsive, is where most of the websites in the world are heading toward, is responsive design. Because the design does not have to be different on a mobile device. You can build the same code for a desktop and a mobile device, but because it knows what screen it's been shown on, it will change. And there's actually a lot of thought that goes into that, and we're going to talk about that now. Yeah.
And the menu will change too? The menu for the mobile?
The design of the menu will change. The content probably won't.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that in a second, actually. In some cases it does, but in some cases it does not. Before we dive into the actual differences in design, I want to give you a fun tool to work with. This is just something you can keep sort of as you move forward in the world of websites and navigating. The first link at the top there, google.com, you can look at the slides after. Google.com, webmasters, tools, mobile friendly, is a page that looks like this. And all you do is you put in the URL of whatever page you want to have Google test for you to show you how mobile friendly it is. And it's going to run an entire test for you to give you the results and tell you how mobile friendly Google thinks your page is. And we're going to talk in later classes to why Google's opinion should matter to you. But there's a fun little thing you can use. It's
Your website in it.
you can how mobile friendly it is. Yep. Analyze it for you. And then the next one, which is my personal favorite tool to use, which I use all the time, is a tool called Inspect Element. Okay, so we're all going to try this. Pick a website, any website you want. Okay, I am. Sorry?
Aritzia.com.
Aritzia.com, that's one. Okay, let's pick. I'm going to go here. I'm going to choose a website called freshbooks.com. Okay, it doesn't matter what website you use. Just pick a website. Ideally, it could be a product or service. Or does Nest is a good one to try. Okay, so you're on the website. Now what I'd like you to do using your mouse is I'd like you to right-click. Okay. Sorry. Are most of you using Chrome?
Yes.
Yes.
Is anyone not using Chrome? You all get A pluses in this class. Congratulations. Chrome is a brilliant browser. Okay, anyway.
Chrome or go home.
Yes. I should tattoo that somewhere on my arm. Okay. Then I'd like you to, so you right click and just click the word inspect. Hopefully most of you see that. You see the word inspect? Okay, how many of you see something that kind of looks like this now?
Yeah.
Or it's on the side. It doesn't matter whether it's at the bottom or on the side. Really? Now, if you look closely, there is a tiny, at the top here, if it's on the side, you'll see it. There's a tiny thing that looks like a mobile device. It's a tiny little thing. Just click it. Yeah, it says toggle, totally. But once you click it, what I'd like you to do is then just refresh the browser. So just refresh your screen. So now what you're seeing is a mobile version of the same page that you were on. It's showing you what you would see if you were on a mobile site. And, interestingly enough, if you're using the same version of Chrome as I am, you can actually choose what mobile device you see. In fact, I'm currently looking at it on an Apple iPhone 5. If I click a drop down, I can pick a bunch of different phones. I can pick an iPad, hit refresh, and it'll show me what it maybe looks like on an iPad. So, yeah, this inspect element tool is not just used to show different mobile sites, it's used for about 1 billion different things, but this is a fun one. It's the one I like to use it for. Is to see what my site would look like if I were using it on a mobile device. Anyway. That's all. I just wanted to show you that fun little tool. Feel free to We're actually going to skip this next part because I want to get into the actual use of wireframes. But some of these big sites that you're looking at here, Garmin, GPS company, TED, a lot of you might have heard of TED Talks, things like that, Xbox, Microsoft product, and Amazon.com. What we would have done is just gone to their sites and then done the whole screen, making the screen smaller and trying it in Inspect Element and seeing whether these sites are actually mobile friendly or whether they're using responsive design or not. Feel free to try it out or try it with whatever site you like, really. Take a look at it, drag the screen over, make it smaller, maybe even look at it on your mobile device and see what type of design are they using. Are they using static? Are they using responsive, fluid, adaptive? It can just be very interesting because some of the bigger companies still haven't decided to switch over and start using these different types of design. They've decided to stick with static design. So let's talk about a few of the unique aspects of mobile design. So the last thing we're going to talk about, and then we're going to dive into wireframe. The first one is that on mobile, in a lot of cases, you're going to see single column layouts. Why is that? Anyone want to take a guess why you're more likely to see things that are in single columns on a mobile device as opposed to, maybe this is your kind of site here on the left,
I love
one that has everything and you have to zoom in, but one that's designed to be a bit more mobile friendly is designed like the one on the right. Anyone want to guess why?
Because I guess if you're on the run, you can't zoom in and you gotta tap a big button. It's dumbed down, basically.
Dumbed down.
That's what we're
People might argue easier to use. Things like this, big buttons, a lot of space for your finger. Remember, in your mobile device, you don't have a mouse. Your mouse is your fingertip, the index finger usually, or your thumb. And if you look at the size of those things, like take a look at your actual index finger right now, and you look at the size of it, and you look at the size of your thumb, compare that to a mouse on your screen. These things are actually much bigger. Physically, they're actually much bigger than a mouse click, a mouse pointer. And so, as a result, we actually need to design things on mobile to be bigger. Sometimes it's super annoying when things are so small on a mobile device that you can't click what you want to click. Those of you who have an iPhone and you try to use the keyboard, find that super annoying sometimes. I've had an iPhone for like 6 years and I still am not good with the keyboard. In this case, you're designing for things to be tapped on. So using a mouse, you can hover over something, right? Like a menu. We talked about sort of the poor design choice of designing a menu. When you hover over it, does something. On a mobile phone, you can't really hover over something, right? You have to click on it. So that's a design decision that has to be thought about. And then the other thing is, with a mobile device, if you're designing a button, A, you should make it look like a button, and then B, when someone clicks that button, or taps on that button, I should say, something should happen. It should look like something is happening. Right? So maybe it changes color for a quick second, or it dents in or something. It looks like something is happening. Because again, on a mobile device, it's tricky sometimes to actually know whether something's happening or not. One of the final things we're going to talk about with mobile is this beautiful thing called the hamburger menu. The reason it's called a hamburger menu? Because it kind of looks like a hamburger. Yeah, so what Bia was saying was that, it's not always convenient, but the interesting thing, folks, is that some websites now won't even have a regular menu on their desktop version of their site because so many people have come to know what these 3 lines do. Right? You click on it, you know that when you see those lines, usually they're in a specific place. Usually they're in the top right or top left of the screen to start. And usually when you click on them, they do something like bring up a menu. Most of the time, that's what's going to happen. Most of the time. Few examples here of websites that are doing things that are mobile friendly. There's WWF, World Wildlife Fund, hamburger menu, huge buttons, really big image here as well. And in fact, this is actually a carousel, interestingly enough. They're just using arrows for you to scroll between. I don't know whether this is auto-rotating or not, but the buttons are pretty big. Salesforce.com, big B2B software. Again, menus up there. I told you we'd talk about this, the idea that does the fit principle change when you're on a mobile device? Well, again, depending on the company and their goal for that page, it actually does not change. Because if you think about it, when you load up something on your mobile screen, right? You typically like click on the browser, you type something into Google, you just typed it in. Let's say you even move your finger away from the screen and you look for something to click on. The bigger the button and the more obvious it is, like these two buttons are pretty big, this button is a little bit bigger than that button there. Again, the bigger screen space it takes up, the more likely or the easier it is for you to click on. And so that's why they're doing it that way, is because they're designing it in such a way that it's easier for you to click on. Interestingly enough, the company on the right-hand side is using a different style of menu than other companies. The companies in the middle and on the left. So on the right, their menu is actually at the very bottom. And it shows you sort of everything. And it has 3 dots to show you more options. But that's just an example of a different type of menu. Because a hamburger menu isn't your only option. Different types. Okay? So when you are thinking about a mobile-first design, these are the kinds of questions that you should be asking. Probably the biggest question, the first question, right, is who, even before the journey question, is who is coming. Are they actually mobile users? The people that you're targeting, do they use mobile phones? Are they more likely to choose mobile over desktop? What stage of the journey are they at? A big question you have to ask on a mobile device is, what content do I need to show first? Or do people come to my mobile site for a reason? Is there a common reason why people would use a mobile device to come to my site? I'll give you an example. Think about a restaurant. If you're looking up a restaurant on your mobile phone, what are you most likely looking for? Anyone? The hours. Anything else? Menu. Phone, location. Those 4 things: phone, location, menu, hours. If your mobile device, mobile site just had those 4 buttons on it, you might argue it'll probably be the most effective thing ever, because someone coming to your restaurant's website on a mobile phone might not be looking for anything else, quite honestly. An important question to ask when you're thinking about mobile first is, what content does not need to exist on a mobile device? This is an interesting one, because remember, think back to that inverted pyramid thing, right? You start with the most important content, then you go down to the least important stuff. So if I'm on a mobile device, what sort of stuff do I really need to know? Am I going to spend hours looking at your website on my mobile device? Probably not. If so, and I'm only going to read a little bit, do you need to have all those paragraphs explaining stuff, or do you need just the bullet points, the essentials? The fun part about responsive design, folks, is that we're not going to get into it too deep in this class, but if you ever choose to go down the path of responsive design, designers can actually choose to take out content when they make things smaller. So when you look at a website and it changes when it's getting smaller, actually pay attention to what's changing. Is it just the boxes are moving around, or is the content actually disappearing? Is new content showing up? Are words changing or disappearing? Just pay attention to that stuff, because I'm telling you, there is a lot of thought that goes into what's actually happening when the screen's getting smaller. So if you're ever involved in a website design project and you're trying to think mobile first, ask yourself, what are the main things that we need to communicate here? And let's start with those things, and then as we get bigger, what can we add more information to that maybe people would have either a bit more time or actually have the screen real estate to be able to see and read and care about. Does that all make sense? Any questions? Yeah, Andy.
What about pieces where you would have more features available to you on mobile? Like, for example, Instagram, there's features that you can do on your mobile device that you can't do on a desktop, or apps that are more like
Interactive.
interactive,
Right.
games of speed, or
Great question. So those apps are purely mobile or mobile first primarily, and in those cases, it's perfectly fine because that's the intended use of the app, right? Like, you don't get Instagram to use it on the desktop. And so when you're in a situation like that, you just have to design for a mobile user. And that's what you're going to see in a lot of cases, right? When a product has been designed to be used on a mobile phone, you are going to see more features when you use it on your mobile phone. Like, for instance, with the Facebook Messenger app, this might not be a good example, but let's just say that on the phone, it has the ability to access my camera so I can take a picture, which makes more sense. I do have a camera on my laptop too, but maybe it's not going to necessarily allow me to use that because most people might not think to use that. But on a phone, I have a camera there, so if I need to take a picture of something and send it to someone via Facebook Messenger, it's going to give me that option. That's a simple example of a feature that's been designed specifically for a mobile device because they know most people who use it, or all people who use it, are using it on a phone. Right? So it's a great point you bring up, and the truth is that for the apps that have been designed for mobile devices, you will probably in all cases see more features on a mobile device. A fun one that I like is actually Canada Post. So Canada Post, if you go to their website now, especially, there's a big area that shows you tracking code, or where you want to find your how do you track your parcel, and there's an area for it. But on the mobile device, I think it's the first thing that you see. So it's not that there's more features there, but it's a higher priority, and so they make it a bit more prominent, which I think is kind of interesting. And I think, I can't remember whether it's the web version or the app, but you can take a picture and it scans the code for you. Could be the app, yeah. Cool. Yeah, Annie?
So if you're designing an app that's mobile first,
Yep.
intended to be used by that audience,
Yep.
is there some kind of information available to you about where things usually occur, or how, like, standard button size, or,
Oh, that's a good question.
or is it just whatever you like?
Great question.
Button is here, should the menu be on this side? Yet most of the apps I use, the menu's on the left.
Yeah. Again, that gets into, sort of the science of UI design. I've never designed an app, so I can't actually tell you the answer, but I'm sure that there's more than enough, and it's beyond the scope of this class, but there's probably a lot of, again, just like there are principles for web design, there are probably a lot of principles for app design as well.
I was gonna say too, some companies publish like a UI design guidelines, like how they recommend that.
Right.
you
Yeah.
use their-
Yeah, probably the development companies, like I would imagine Google has one too, probably, where there are definitely, I can tell you, there are definitely guides for that kind of stuff. At least best practices, at the very least. But it's beyond the scope of this class to cover that stuff. But when you're getting into app design, if you're interested in app design, totally, there are principles and practices probably. But then again, some companies, just like website design, will probably break those just to be different, right? It's not uncommon to see that. Okay, we are going to take a bit of a break, probably about 5 minutes just to walk around, get some water, go to the washroom, whatever. And then when we come back, I'd like everyone to, hopefully you've taken a look at wireframe and you may have had to play around. Doesn't matter if you have played extensively or not. We're going to play pretty extensively soon. I think the website is wireframe.cc. That's actually the actual website. It's not wireframe.com. It's wireframe.cc. I have it up here. Yeah, wireframe.cc. You should see something that looks like this. So let's come back in 5 minutes, and then I'll show you one slide, and then we'll get going with this stuff. If you can watch the demo too. There's just a watch demo button there that can help. But if you haven't already, that could be a cool place to start. Yeah. Yeah.
For this page,
Yep.
I'm just trying to have a website
Wireframe?
that
Or-
you,
Oh yeah.
do source things.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, like I'm right clicking and it's not letting me. I managed to do it on a different website.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, I don't know if
Scroll all the way up.
I don't know if it, I guess they closed it now by some. I had tested it out to see if it's like friendly or whatever on that Google tool and it said it wasn't, so or like there was something like
Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
So then let's check to like with the social media or whatever. I don't know why she didn't
or I guess they found some issues. Yeah, and said that it like Google why.
Scan it? Yeah. Yeah. So Google might find those kinds of issues that are unique to Google. But in general, it seems from a design perspective, it seems pretty good. I'm going to be right.
Anywhere else seems like it.
I know. That's weird. That's weird, actually. Okay, I'll be right back, actually. I'm just going to get some water.
Okay, so it's the last is like said the difference like is really rude to everybody. Like some lady said she tried to return something that was really or we like swore at her. Like because she was like asking her questions or something. Like he's like a dick. I don't know if you can. But hopefully. But I had like major issues with that 3 years ago because I bought a whole bunch of stuff and then had to cancel my order, but like it was like the next day, like before anything was even ordered. Like this was like months of May. It was like we're moving to and I took presents and we're getting all new furniture and everything. And we ordered a whole bunch of stuff. It was like in July and for September or the end of September, so months in advance. I went back to cancel the order and they like gave me a hassle. So I was like, can't say final sale if I haven't taken delivery of anything I haven't seen. So they just gave me a hassle and I had like that. Yeah, and then the sales guy was like, yeah, so I was like, well, when we were walking in, he was all happy. He asked the course because he like, changed me. And then when we were in the store, like, he just like gave us like his normal dirty look. Cool, buddy. Leon was the one, yeah. Oh, it's still, it's marketing like furniture. Yeah, it's still,
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I'm planning a new job. I just
Yes.
have 2 weeks in the job.
Okay, great.
I'm not really good in the judo
Okay,
part.
yep, yep.
And they're using right now Hotspot,
Yep,
the
yep.
website, but they're only using it for the e-blast,
Email, yep.
and the Beyond.
Okay.
So they don't want to use it
For other
anymore.
things?
Yeah.
Oh, they don't want to use it anymore. Okay,
Yeah,
they want to
just
stop.
another platform software.
Just for email.
Just for email.
Yeah.
And that's my task right now.
Is to find one?
Yeah, I don't know where to start.
Try MailChimp.
MailChimp?
Yeah, I can write it down for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the name of it, yeah. So, there are a few actually, so I'll give you two. So why don't they want to use other parts of HubSpot?
Why?
Yeah. Because HubSpot's pretty powerful. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, right? Which is interesting, but if they don't want to use the other stuff, then it will cost a lot just to do it.
Yeah. Okay, right now, I'm not pretty sure. I mean, because they have another another system for the back end of the website.
Okay.
So,
Right. So yeah, so they just use HubSpot can do website too, but because they have another system, you know.
right now I don't know when
Okay.
it use only for HubSpot for everything. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But if they only use for that, it doesn't make sense.
Constant contact, one word.
Yeah.
If you look this up in Google, you see stuff, and then MailChimp.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like those two.
Really?
They'll be much cheaper than HubSpot for sure, and they're just designed for you.
Okay. And HubSpot can be the back end of the website,
Yes.
just to build the website. And
Yep. Yeah, there are a lot of websites that are.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. So something to keep in mind for sure. What I would do too, Carla, is I would, ask them, your company, what are you looking for? One tool to do everything, or are you looking for a lot of different tools to do small things? If you're looking for a lot of different tools, then that's good because that's email. And if you have something for web, that's fine. But if you're looking for one tool to do a lot of things, HubSpot could be the answer. And then it's a question of, okay, how do we learn how to use it? And you can ask HubSpot to teach you. You don't have to know everything, obviously. HubSpot will teach you and show you that. Because if you're paying for it already and you're not using it, then you're already paying, so you may as well use it.
yeah, we have another designer, designing the company.
Okay. Outside, yeah.
Outside,
External, yeah.
external, and he's the one that makes all the design of the website. But he's
Oh, okay.
not using it.
Do you know what they use? What do you use for the back end of the website? Don't know. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. He's looking right now another one.
Okay.
So we are going to change it
To a different one?
to a
Yeah.
different one.
Yeah.
One is building,
Yeah. Anyway, check it out. Check those out.
that works.
Okay, no problem, no problem.
Oh,
Okie dokie.
it's a really nice story. I went into the yeah, really nice. I was accidentally yeah, I know. I went there accidentally because there was wine, but like lipstick on the press machine. So it's like a little store, and I was up for 2 hours.
All right, wireframe. This is fun. So, firstly, why wireframe? And I'm not talking about the product wireframe, but the concept of wireframing. Why should you wireframe something? Why are we even covering this in this course? Because there are a couple of reasons. The first one is, if you think of the concept of building a house from scratch, or putting an extension on a house, most of the time you're going to have plans on paper before you actually do it, right? And wireframing is the same thing. It's the exact same principle. It's like a blueprint. That's the best way to think about it. It's like just a blueprint for what something is actually going to look like. It helps people who are designers, graphic designers, or user interface designers actually read and understand like what they need to put where, what they need to design, shapes, sizes, position, things like that. And then it also, really importantly, it helps you highlight whether there are any flaws in your design. So when you put something out on paper and someone starts to ask you, well, okay, if I wanted to do this, how would I do it? Then you might think, oh, we haven't actually built that. Or our mobile design doesn't actually take into account that need or anything. And so you might have to redesign it. And at least it's on paper still, so you haven't actually built or coded anything, so you can change it fast. But these are the reasons why we wireframe first. Okay? So let's actually go into the tool, and I'm going to show you some stuff. So if you already watched the demo and you've already started doing some stuff, again, really, really, really simple here, folks. Let me show you the basics. You always start by drawing a box, and it's interesting because you can turn the box into a circle, but it starts by asking you to draw a box. So if I wanted to draw it's a really big box, I click my mouse and I'm just making a box, and then the first thing it asks you to do is choose what you want that thing to be. So if I want it to be a box, I choose the box. If I want it to be a rounded box, a circle, thing like an image, a block of quote unquote text, bullets, a headline, or
Will headline be a menu?
a headline. You can actually, sorry, a headline could be,
Cause like I couldn't find an option for menus, so that looked the most like a menu.
totally. If you reshape it actually, so I'll click on one of these and you'll see that there's another set of options that I get. So if I click on headline and I click on the headline itself, in fact if I double click on the actual headline itself, it gives me the option to make it larger or smaller, or I can change its color. It doesn't give you a lot of options in terms of color choice and things like that because it's a very, very simple wireframing tool, but that's kind of the point, is that it's designed to be really, really easy to use. The other thing is once I put something on the page, I can click and drag it around. I can use this thing that shows up and I can make it a bit smaller. This isn't a good example, so I'm just going to click delete. But let's say I make a box, like an actual box. I double click the box and I make it an orange box. I can change the size of that box. I can make it wider, thinner, bigger. Doesn't really matter. And you can use your keyboard too to do certain things. So I can like Control C to copy something, Control V to paste it. So now I have two boxes. I can click and delete it to take it away. So the other fun part is that you can almost treat it like kind of PowerPoint or Word. So if I wanted to create some text, let's say, and say this is a box, and I wanted to drag this over, I can drag it over like that, double click the text and make it white and make it big, say ooh, this is a box. And so what I'd like you to do now is just play around with the tool a bit, just kind of get familiar with it. You'll see that once I've designed something, so see there's a box here. If I want to build another box over it, I have to first go out, build the box, make it a box, and then drag it over. And let's say I want to rearrange the order of things here. There's actually a button at the very top called Arrange Elements, and it allows me to, I think, send this to the back. One of these is that. I think this one here, yeah, there we go. So I can.
So, what's the relevance of the colors?
Only to make something distinct. So I know you don't have many options of making things super colorful. That's fine. But I'll show you an example in a second, and you'll see sort of what the purpose is. So what I'd like you to do is play around for a few seconds, and then when you're ready, I'd like you to take a look at this website, ewedding.com. Don't worry about the fact that the scroll thing at the bottom is actually moving. But what I'd like you to try and do is wireframe this page. So use wireframe and try and recreate this page. Toward the middle-ish, in about a few minutes actually, I'll show you what I did, just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. You can get as specific as you want. Obviously, you can see already, you know, you're not going to have the same color options. So think of it that way. Just think of the fact, oh, the background is darker and the menu at the top is lighter. So maybe I can use a dark gray and a light gray. And then the two buttons in the middle, one's one color, one's another color. So just use opposite colors. You have to try and think a bit conceptually there, and that's fine. But start playing around. Start thinking about where you want to actually use text versus maybe using boxes. In a few seconds, I'm going to come around and see how each of you are doing, and I'll be able to provide some help if you need it. So draw it outside of it first, and then drag it over now. Yes. I just want to interject for a quick second and let you know that if just the nature of this tool is you might start to see at the top right hand corner a button that says save. And if you click that button, all that's going to happen is it's going to create a unique URL for your drawing. Okay, so you just try it right now. Click the save button and you'll see at the top that you've got a link now. Make sure that if you are working on something that you copy that link and put it somewhere safe, because it's going to allow you to come back to that drawing in whatever stage that it's at. So when you're doing this for your project, which is assignment 3, and you're doing it over time, maybe you don't do it all at once, just click save, copy that URL, put it somewhere, and then just keep coming back to it. For the assignment, for the purpose of the assignment, you are going to have to share the link with me so that I can see your drawing. The tool we used to use for this assignment, which unfortunately there isn't a free version of anymore, you used to be able to save your drawing as like a picture and stuff. And if you pay for the version that the premium version of Wireframe here, you can also do the same thing. It was called Mockingbird. Go Mockingbird. Yeah, it's a fun one. Yeah, it was a great tool. You could do a lot more too, a lot more use of color, like tons of fun stuff. I should show you an example of a site that a student designed on Mockingbird, just using Wireframe, using Mockingbird rather. It was beautiful, really well done. But this one is far simpler, obviously, very, very basic, but it can still allow you to do some interesting things. So if you have questions or anything, just put up your hand. I'll come around. I can help you. Yeah.
How do you group it?
Oh, select just. Okay, so let's say you wanted to actually. So you want to group these two things together? Right. So take your mouse over here and actually see if you can drag all the way over. Does that do anything? No. Okay.
I know I saw
click
it
one.
somewhere.
Hold shift and click the other. And then right click. That's okay, you're good.
I
You're good.
typed it. Oh, it doesn't actually say it.
Group.
It says etc. blah blah blah.
Okay, undo maybe.
Or you type it somewhere else and then copy and
Undo
drag
again.
it in.
Okay, let's just try recreating what you just did.
Okay, no.
So you've got an oval, yeah, that's nice. For text, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, great. And move it over. Move it on top. Sure. Great. Okay, move it on top. Great. And then try the shift thing. So if you click shift now and just click the element above it. And click shift again, yeah. And now just move your with your mouse, just move it.
Uh-huh, so I guess that works.
Yep.
As a publisher, it's so much easier to just
Yeah.
group everything together.
Because you can highlight over it, right?
Yeah,
Probably.
I took the 2013 publisher.
Of course.
Which is so hard because it's not offered here.
Okay, okay.
So they're just saying, and now like, when they changed it, I was like, oh my
Right.
gosh, but now, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
use
yeah.
that every day.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
But I was like, the grouping.
I know.
Okay.
It makes things good. Shift is your friend there. Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks.
noticed that sometimes it doesn't let you move things, like
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, click away from it and then try click on it again. Maybe it's asking you to type something because it's a text box in there.
I've tried it with just rectangles as well, though. It's kind of weird, so. I guess it
Yeah.
the text was
Weird.
missing.
Okay.
Also there was, I kind of saw a slider option on the
I feel like we're all
carousel option somewhere.
Oh, a carousel? No, I haven't seen
Or
one.
maybe I was.
Yeah. To make the carousel, I just made two buttons, two
just
circles.
little-
Yeah. So folks, let me show you, just on the screen, big screen here, I'm going to show you what I spent, and I'll be honest, this maybe took, for me to get really sort of fine-tuned with it, probably a little over 30 minutes for me. So just so you have a good frame of reference. This is my version of that homepage, the eWedding site. This is mine.
Oh my god. You get the text different size. Oh, there's like little.
Or you could just double click the text and you can make it bigger. It's not actually all that crazy. Like if you look, I've just used shapes. Like I'm just using big gray box, small gray boxes, the images, the headline thing for the logos at the bottom. I'm actually using the same text because I think that matters. I think the text does matter because we talked about this a bit, the inverted pyramid, the whole importance at the top of the site thing. I just used a fake thing for the logo. I didn't go try to bother with designing one or anything there. I just used an image and I had the word logo above it there. And then some buttons for the menus. I just made them a little darker gray. So yeah, if you're looking for,
You can't change what it is after you made it?
sorry, so let's see.
Now I want this to be around.
Ah, yeah.
Oh.
But it's really easy. Just delete and Dropbox here. There you go. Oh, it looks the same. I don't think it actually is. It might be because they could be using just a symbol or just control C. Yeah, the copy button, friends, is your friend again. Don't try and redesign the same box and try and shape it and everything. Just hit Control C on the box and Control V to paste. That's how I was able to get those boxes all the same size. Okay, so you can speed up a lot of things. Like if you look on this page, I've actually copied a lot of things. So this bottom thing I copied to be the same as this. These three things are the same, so I just copied it 3 times, changed the text. These two things are the same, so I copied them. These 3 things are the same, copied them. Already there's like, 40% of the page designed just by copying things really quickly. Katrina, you were asking me about color earlier, and you can see here, this is how I've chosen to use it, right? I've chosen, again, just to put emphasis on things being lighter and darker.
Yeah.
So even if you just do that, that's fine, right? That's enough.
I was gonna ask, like, probably depends what stage you're at, right? Because if you're just giving someone a very rough idea, you don't want to go too much into color.
Totally.
And stuff too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, great point. So Bia just said it depends what stage you're at with the color. Like, if you're just starting out and you're just trying to get ideas down, you don't need to give too much direction on color. And part of the reason for that too could be if you're paying a designer, their job might be to choose colors and suggest colors to you. And so, you know, you don't necessarily do their job for them because that's what you're paying them to do. So maybe you let them choose and come up with some color schemes.
Or I think too, sometimes it can be distracting, like if you're just trying to figure out where the elements.
Exactly.
You don't want
Yes.
people fighting over, I don't like the rest.
Absolutely. Great point. When you think you're somewhat close to, and again, as I said, this level of detail that I've got here, it took me about half an hour to get there. So you've been at it for 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't expect you to be super close to finishing, but in case you are, or in case you've tried this already and you are, that's fine. Let me know. I have another challenge for you, of course. It's okay, it's fun. You know the website, the point of the class tonight is just to get you familiar with using it a little bit, so you're not scared of it or anything. And also to teach you how to save something so that you can go back to it as well. Yeah, the shortcuts. Control C to copy. Control V to paste. If you're using a Mac, that is Command C, Command V.
It's too bad you can't turn like fake blocks of text into real text.
Right.
Very easily.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of limitations with it, but to be honest, as I said, it's basic, and I actually like that it's so basic. To your point, Bia, it allows you to put emphasis on the things that matter, right? Like, I want 2 buttons here. What do they look like? That's not the point. The fact that there are 2 buttons, that's what I want. You know, like images and stuff, so, yeah. It is funny to listen to the number of clicking, but that's cool. that's okay. Typically you hear a waterfall of typing, but clicking is also fun to listen to.
So save this.
So, whoa, okay. Next challenge. Okay. So yeah, save it. Obviously, save your work. Let's take a
You
look.
have to save the link.
You don't have to save it for the purpose of the assignment or anything, but in case you want it. Great. That's awesome. Do so.
Skills. Blah 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 blah.
All right. So, here's the next challenge. Some of you might notice that on the top left-hand corner, If you hover over the thing that looks like a screen, you'll have more options. You have a mobile, you have a tablet-like thing. So what I'd like you to do is go to the eWedding website, take your mouse, make the website smaller, see what it looks like on a mobile device, because that's kind of what it's going to look like on a mobile device, and then build a wireframe for mobile.
Let's just open a new window.
Yeah, you can open a new window, totally. Open a new window, try it out.
So now you just start all over?
You start all over.
Aw, man.
But fun fact, folks, for all of you, because this is a browser-based thing, you can actually copy one element from one tab and paste it in another tab. So if you're working on both at the same time, just copy a lot of the elements over and just reshape them to make it look like a mobile device. So in case you're interested, this is what I came up with.
What did you say? Keep it open in one tab and then go to the other, and then open a new tab, and then you can just copy and paste that.
And you can copy elements over. So I can copy like the logo over. I can copy those two buttons over and just make them a bit bigger.
Wait, how did you? Oh, I see.
Yeah, just copy and then paste in the new one.
Yeah, I didn't see that. No, I didn't see the phone outline.
Yeah. The phone outline is at the top left-hand corner. You can reshape it, reshape your screen to make it look like a phone. Yeah. Built for phone versus building for desktop.
How did you do the background color? Was it just a big rectangle?
Sorry, how did I get?
The background color, was it just a big rectangle that you sent to the back, or was there any way to do it?
No, I created a different rectangle, and if you double click on the you can change the color, obviously, right? So I made the rectangle kind of big, as you
Yeah.
see. I ordered it so it's sort of in front of that gray there for you,
Yeah.
and then behind the text. So the arrangement of things
Like
kind
you
of
just sent it to
totally.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like this background.
No, and in fact, I think in my case, I created 3 separate rectangles. I didn't actually. Yeah, first thing I did was create the 3 separate rectangles. Then I kind of built from the back moving forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and folks, you're gonna find whatever is easier for you. Like, so for me, as I was telling Bia here, I built that design that you're seeing there. I built from the back moving forward. So I started with the big background elements, like the big light gray box at the top, the big dark gray box in the middle, and then the gray box at the bottom. Then sort of that black box behind those 3 images, I did that. Then the black box behind the 2 buttons, I did that. So things like that. You'll start to, as you get sort of more comfortable with the tool, the way you layer things can start to matter and can make things easier and faster for you. So you might start to layer things in a way that's just less work for you. So feel free to sort of keep playing and try it out. Yeah, that's funny. There might be tools that you're used to that could be easier to use, but once you get used to this one, it's really, as I said, the reason I like it, the reason I chose it for this course is because I think, some of you have already shown, like, you can get used to this in 30 minutes. It's pretty fast. It's not hard, not crazy hard to use.
How did you say that we can see the mobile?
Yeah, so if you click on, yeah, and click on that. Yeah, now it's
But that's
making it
standard,
smaller,
like,
but
you
if you open a
just
new
use,
tab,
like,
actually,
if you squish it, but you
and
have to, like,
go to
open it
wireframe
another
again,
time.
wireframe.cc,
Do it in another tab. It's taking your desktop site, and trying to
Yeah.
make it fit on that screen. So it would look
and then
like a
start by
normal
clicking this
size
and clicking
canvas
this.
if you have an image
Oh,
as
okay.
well.
Now, look at this. So if you go back to the old one, okay, take this.
What is it?
Yeah, the orange box, doesn't matter. Yeah, copy. You go there, paste. See? So that's how you can develop it faster
Yeah.
for mobile, right? Because you now, if you know which ones you need to copy over, just copy, paste, and then reshape if you want
Okay.
a little bit faster.
Okay.
Does everyone get the copy pasting from mobile to desktop? That's a really neat. I didn't think it could do that when I tried it. I tried it for the sake of speed. I think it took me less than 10 minutes to build the mobile site because of how easy the copy paste thing made it for me. So when it comes to your project, just kind of keep that in mind, that the mobile is going to be a bit easier for you to design at least, but doesn't change the fact that you need to make design decisions for mobile, so keep that in mind too. Okay, in about 3 minutes or so, I just want everyone to take a break. We're going to look over the assignment 3, and then time's your own, really. I don't have any more material to cover, so keep playing with the tool if you want. You know how to use it. No worries. Just so everyone knows, assignments 1 and 2, again, they were due today, so hopefully you're able to get them in on time. My goal is always to try and get them marked. If I'm being ambitious, I want to try and do it in a week for you. So that would be my goal, but at the very latest 2 weeks is what I try to promise my students. So with this first one, I think I could probably get it back to you in a week, but the real promise is 2 weeks. I might surprise you and get it in a week. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine.
Okay, they're just like stuck in the tree.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Like,
totally fine.
I didn't know if you
No,
buttons
see you
so
guys.
that because the page is just like a one.
That's fine.
So-
Exactly. Yeah, and actually Laura brought that up. And you know, part of the challenge was for you to think about, okay, so if you were designing it, would you create them into separate pages? And if so, that's fine. That's great.
Okay.
You know, you might argue that it could even be easier and it's better because we have more information or whatever, but that's totally fine. And in fact, by adding stuff underneath the bullets, that's even taking a step further than you need to do.
Okay. Okay, and then I didn't put any indicators as to like which ones were full sections that were previously on the site.
That's fine. I can look.
Okay.
So, right? Okay. So, if you don't mind just taking a quick break, I'll just pull up the assignment here. Really, it's fairly, again, straightforward. What I'd like you to do, folks, is I would like you to, and there's a very key word here. Again, we're using the Ultimate Cutting Board as our product. I'd like you to design in wireframe a new homepage, not redesign the current or recreate the current, but design a new homepage for the Ultimate Cutting Board website for both the desktop and the mobile version. Okay, so part 1 is the desktop version, which I showed you in wireframe how you can create that. That's the default. Then you switch to mobile, you build another one just for mobile. And you can use your information architecture, which you did in assignment 2, for the menus if you want to have the pages. Think about your profiles. What are the things they're going to care about when you design your homepage? Think about that, the profile that you've chosen. Remember, you have to choose one profile to do the customer journey for. Maybe think about that profile. And you have to come up with an explanation too in this assignment and tell me why you chose to design the things that you did. Use some of the principles we talked about in tonight's class as well. Obviously, color is going to be hard, but that's fine. There are many other principles we talked about. So at the end of the day, you're going to provide me with 2 links, right? One link is for the desktop, one link is for the mobile version. And also you have to provide me with explanations for both. So why did you design certain things the way you did on the desktop? And then if it's very different on the mobile, which hopefully it is, then why did you choose to change things on the mobile as well?
How do you get the link after you? Like,
Yep, I'll show you.
I know you see it when you hit save, but then how do you get it again? It's
Or just copy it. Once you have it at the top there.
Oh, it's the thing up there. Okay.
Yeah, just copy it. You up there?
Probably.
You just copy it from there. And you paste it. Paste it somewhere safe.
Can I see your mobile one?
Yep. There you go.
Are you looking for something as detailed?
Sorry?
You're looking for something as detailed as that, like with colors and
I
text?
care a lot about the explanation. I really do. So in my case, like I'm using some text. I'm using a fair amount of text from the other page. And the reason I would explain that is because I think that that text is important. And so I'm going to, have text on there and tell you why it's important, why I'm choosing to put it there. If you choose not to have text and instead just have boxes or something, then maybe tell me a bit about why or what text might go there. Because again, remember, it's all about your profile, right? Who is the person reading this page in their mindset? Maybe there are certain words that matter. We've talked about the importance of choosing certain words. So maybe do tell me then what words would you choose? If you don't put any there, what words would you choose and why? Yeah, but this isn't actually a crazy amount of detail,
No.
But
Yeah, I was just thinking because I know I've read like where some designers will do like low fidelity
Right.
wireframes and high fidelity. So then
Totally.
this is more on the high. Fidelity.
totally, yeah, if it's a spectrum, so all that means is a lot of detail, little detail.
Yeah.
This is certainly higher detail than if it were just boxes and colors. But if you can put text and explain things, then do that. Yeah, do that. And actually in the assignment too, in case you're interested folks, the rubric is at the bottom, always very transparent about how I mark things, so they're evenly weighted. Yeah. So if you build a wireframe that has a good explanation as to why you've built it that way, then I'm gonna mark it exactly like that, right? If you choose not to use certain things, but you have an explanation as to why you chose not to use those things, then I'm gonna mark that accordingly. So it's up to you. Okay. Just as a final thing for next week, it sounds like a lot of you already have WordPress stuff, like just from another course or from your personal stuff. But if you don't have a WordPress site, if you've never heard of WordPress, you never used it, anything like that, take a look at the resources section for class 5, which is our next class. I've made 2 videos for you. One video says how to create a WordPress account. If you don't have one, you can just watch that. If you already have a WordPress account, the other video shows you how to add a new site to it, because we're going to be playing in WordPress a lot next week. So just take a look at those 2 videos. They're both like 2.5 minutes. You can watch them both if you want, so you get an understanding of both situations. But it's already up there. I already made it, and it's on the site. It's on D2L now, so it's on, or eConestoga, I should say. It's on those now. So take a look at those, just for next time. Okay. If you have any questions at all about any of the assignments or anything we covered in tonight's class, just let me know. But that's it, folks. That's all I got for you from a content perspective. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes here and answer questions about design, stuff like that. But if not, free to go. Laura.
I do have a question about the wireframe.
Sure. Do you want me to? Okay.
I was a little bit concerned with the last assignment, how it just kind of scrolled. So I did pick out the different
Perfect.
kind of sections.
Perfect.
but I'm not quite sure how you show.
Okay, so good question. I'm just gonna stop this recording. Give me a second.